Test, test. Hello. Welcome back, everyone. Today we are at the beginning of the end of our journey. We are going to be talking about A Court of Wings and Ruin. Here we go. And we don't have a sponsor for this video, so I would like to remind you that there is a super thanks option in the comments if you would like to leave me a little tip. But no, please, you don't have to. It's okay. And let's just begin. Where did we leave off? Oh, yeah. Feyre is now back in the spring court with Tammy. Tamlin thinks he has got his bride back, broke her free from Rhysand's mind control. But we all know that Miss Feyre is now High Lady of the Night Court, and she is actually acting as a spy and watching Tamlin's every goddamn move, because Tamlin allied with Hybern and is letting Hybern's troops come in through the spring court to take over Prythian. Okay, thank you again to all of the artists. We've got lots of new ones. Isaac, I know you guys are holding out because he's been up here this whole time. We're not going to see him again. I'm so sad. But he's just up here because I feel like he deserves a spot, all right? Anyway, the book starts out with a prologue from Rhysand's point of view 2 years before the wall was built, during the first war with the humans and the Fae. I'm not going to go into it. It's basically he's just walking through the battlefield looking at a lot of death, and he's kind of thinking about death. I think it's supposed to make us worried about what's going to happen in this book. But it's just a weird way to start the book, honestly. So we're just going to skip right past it, and we're going to start Chapter 1, back in Feyre's point of view as always. And good news, guys. Feyre can paint again. Yeah, she is painting a bunch of beautiful lies. I kid you not. She's trying to show that she is getting back to her old self, right? She's healing, etc. And the way that she can show it, the only way that Tamlin seems to get the message, is by her painting. So she's just sitting outside, painting flowers, literally daydreaming about burning the house down when Lucien and Tamlin come out, because who is here? Ianthe. Did I pronounce her name Ianthe in the last video for about 4 hours worth of content? Yeah. So Ianthe is here to have a little bit of a meeting. What do we remember about her from the last book? She's the one who sold out Feyre's sisters to Hybern, and that's why they are now High Fae. And like, spoiler alert, not really digging it, didn't want to be High Fae. And even Tamlin and Lucien are really upset about this betrayal, but they still want to hear her out. Okay, give everybody a second chance. So let's hear what our High Priestess has to say. Also, I just need to give you the tone of Feyre's POV right now. Tamlin walks up as she's painting and he's like, oh, it's really nice. And she's like, oh, this old thing, it's a mess. And Tamlin's like, I think we all are. And Feyre says, I reined in the urge to roll my eyes. So Feyre is like really suffering through this whole spy thing. She finds Tamlin insufferable. What is Ianthe's reason for pulling all of this shit? She goes with the narrative that we heard from Hybern, which is, oh, I just thought that, you're immortal now, so I thought that you'd want your sisters with you forever. Like, do you want to really live for hundreds of years and watch the two people you love most die? And Lucien is just standing there, like, literally being like, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Tamlin's like, all right, calm down, Lucy. Like, let the woman speak. And Tamlin's basically like, it's okay, Ianthe, we all made mistakes, because big mistake, they allied with Hybern, and they're still allied with Hybern. I don't understand war, but King of Hybern said that the Spring Court would remain untouched and undisturbed, even though he wants to take over all of Prythian. Does that not smell totally false to you? I'm not a High Lord, but like, But Tamlin isn't that stupid. He is ordering kind of an evacuation of the western coast where Hybern is going to come in from. He's moving everybody east, but they are locked in to this allyship. There's nothing that they can do. So welcome to the Spring Court. Shit show. Okay. And speaking of people that we don't necessarily like or trust, Tamlin lets us know that somebody's coming to town today. Who? Jurian. 2 eyeballs in tow. All right. But to his credit though, Tamlin did keep his promise to Feyre. Tamlin is allowing Feyre to be in all of the meetings and know what's going on and everything like she had asked, right? And this is part of her spy duties because she can still kind of contact Rhysand. She's really paranoid about using that connection though. She thinks like her wires are tapped or something, so she doesn't really use it, but she just kind of checks in like, hey, how's everybody doing? And he's like, fine, I love you. That's great. And she finally has a little piece of information to share with Rhys, which is they are planning to knock down the wall still. Why haven't they done it yet? Because for some reason, changing Elaine and Nesta drained the Cauldron's power. It's not powerful enough to break down the wall. So they're just figuring out how to recharge it basically. Also, if you're wondering about her smell, remember how mates have like a very distinct smell? If the mating bond didn't snap, won't they notice? Well, they're thinking the mating bond has like never really been snapped before, so they're assuming that it will fade with time. Rhys is just kind of like a sticky smell. It stays on her for a while. Lucien, as we remember, knows that something is very, very up with Feyre, so he's kind of like, girl. Everybody's more focused on other things. All right, we got Feyre back. That's all that matters. Jurian arrives, and he brought along the King of Hybern's niece and nephew. But the second he walks in, we have a very heated exchange with Feyre and Jurian. He says something about like her mate or, something stupid. But the interaction is important because this is where we learn that Feyre isn't just spying and passing along information. She's got a bigger plan. She is going to crumble the Spring Court from the inside. So her fighting with Jurian just made Tamlin believe her even more that she's loyal to him. She basically says, this is my home, my court, my High Lord. And she makes sure that Tamlin overhears. So Tamlin trusts her pretty implicitly and also kind of has a little bit more hatred towards Jurian, right? We're going to see more of this, okay? She's stirring the pot. The Hybern twins are Prince Dagden and Princess Branna. And if this picture could not say it all, Branna is 100% in charge, dog, all right? He just like stands quietly and watches her every move and like doesn't seem to have a mind of its own. Weird ass vibes immediately upon walking in. Even Jurian doesn't seem to really like them. Now that the guests are here, they're all gonna have dinner together, and Jurian just continues to kind of be a piece of shit, says stuff to Tamlin, says stuff to Feyre, doesn't care that they're allies really. When Nesta feels a little tap tap on her mental shield, and she's like, oh, game on, I've missed this. She realizes Jurian was riling them up so that they would be distracted and emotional, because that's when it's easiest to break into somebody's mental shield. And as we know, Feyre and Rhysand aren't the only people who can do this. There are other people with this power. The creepy twins, they have this power. So Feyre just like slams into her mental shield, shuts the door on their fingers is like kind of the image we get, and they both kind of are like, ooh, ooh. She also throws a shield around Tamlin and Lucien so they can't get in there. She does a little like punch onto their mental shields just so they know. Don't fuck with Feyre, okay? This is where we get a little moment with Lucien. I missed him. I'm just gonna say it, I always miss when Lucien's not around, I'm sad. Lucien is a complicated character because he's been BFFs with Tamlin for how long? Forever. But he also really likes Feyre, and he really understands that Tamlin fucked up. And obviously allying with Hybern, he's not into this either. So he's just like really upset. And also now his mate Elaine is Feyre's sister. So he's like, really want to be on Feyre's good side, right? This is where we learn that while Feyre was away, Calanmai took place, remember, in A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's this like fairy sex ritual, and Tamlin is supposed to pick a maiden and do the deed, right? He was not in the mood, so in order to still have the festival, he asked Lucien to do it, and the maiden that he was kind of forced to choose was Ianthe. And if you can remember, we learned that Ianthe harassed Rhysand, and we assume also has been harassing Lucien. Lucien has a really complicated relationship with women and intimacy because his like former lover got beheaded because of him, right? So there's a lot of reasons why he wouldn't want to be like pressured into sex Turns out Ianthe gets her way anyway, and they performed the ritual. And Feyre hears this and she knows his whole story. She's just like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Like, even though I'm pissed at you, I would never wish that upon you. And that's when Lucien is like, you've always been a better friend to me than I was to you. Another complicated figure is Alice. Alice was Feyre's kind of head lady in waiting, I suppose. She is technically from the summer court, but she's worked for the spring court for a very long time. That's where her loyalties lie. She works in the court. So she is loyal to Tamlin, but she's the one who handed Feyre to Mor when Tamlin locked her in the house, remember? And Alice is kind of like, for someone who says that she's been brainwashed and kept against her will in the night court, you look happier and healthier than I ever saw you in the spring court. Alice is like, overall, I just want you to be happy. So like, do what you gotta do, but like, play it smart, girl, because you're in the spring court now. I'm not gonna say anything, but like, I can tell that you're up to something. Like, she's basically like Lucien. She's like, things aren't adding up. So I don't want to get in the middle of it. I wish you happiness, but like, don't involve me. Be smart. But now we get to witness Feyre really hatching this plan to make the spring court implode. It's a fun time, okay? She's actually pretty good at this. So we're having the summer solstice party. It's already that time of year. And as we remember, the summer solstice isn't really that much. It's just like dancing. Tamlin breaks out his fiddle, you know, you remember. There's a weird thing where Ianthe gets like blessed by some... I don't know, there's something where the magic chooses to bless Feyre instead of Ianthe, and she gets kind of butthurt, but then she's like, oh no, I meant it to happen like that. Feyre literally could not care less about that, because remember last summer solstice is when they had their first real kiss, and it was like a happy moment, right? So she knows that Tamlin has those memories as well and kind of has romance on the brain. And so she spends the whole night dancing with him and his damn fiddle, kind of buttering him up, right? Getting him in the mood. And then she's like, I'm really tired. I want to go home. Because Lucien has a mate that will not look at him, he's kind of like not in a party mood. And he's like, yeah, I'll walk you back, Feyre, no problem. They get back to their rooms. I forgot to mention that Feyre doesn't sleep with Tamlin. She kind of needs time or whatever, so she asks to have this separate room, and she specifically asks for the room next to Lucien. And so they're across the hallway. They're both like, good night, and shut the door. Feyre has a nightmare, and she immediately runs to Lucien. And Lucien's a good guy. Lucien comforts her, is like, oh, okay, you're good, girl, you're fine. And she like goes in for the hug. She's shaking. And she is in some pajamas. I don't know if they're exactly the lingerie from the night court, but she's like not fully dressed. Who comes walking in to check on her? But Tamlin walks in, and he sees Lucien, who was getting ready for bed. So he's like half clothed, hugging Feyre, who's in like her skimpy little outfit. He is just like, Feyre is pretty much like, oh, I'm feeling much better now. Okay, bye. And runs into her room. And Tamlin literally just stands there for like 5 minutes, wondering if he should kill Lucien. And Feyre's just in her room like, I wonder if Lucien had pieced together that I had known Tamlin would come into my room tonight. I'd given him so many shy touches and glances today, that I wore my most indecent nightgown, that I'd left Lucien's door open, and he was too distracted to notice the shield of air I placed around the room, so he couldn't hear or sense Tamlin, until Tamlin walked in and saw us entangled, nightgown askew, staring at each other so full of emotion. A nightmare, I told Tamlin. I was the nightmare. But Tamlin seems to be in a forgiving mood, so he allows Lucien to accompany Feyre on their next task, which is the creepy twins are here in the spring court to check on the wall and look at it to see like their best way of attacking it, right? And Feyre and Lucien are just helping them along the way. They are walking around the wall where they find a hole, and they glance through the hole, which would be the human realm, and they come across 3 children of the blessed. Reach way back to literally the first chapter of A Court of Thorns and Roses. I told you you'd have to remember. The Children of the Blessed are a cult of humans that still believe that Fae should be in charge. They like worship the Fae as if they were deities. So when the 3 Children of the Blessed see all of these Fae, they're like, oh my God, okay, great. We were looking for you. We would like to come as tributes. We love you. We're big fans. Big fans. And Feyre is just like, she tries to convince them with words like, no, you don't want to be here. And even Lucien is like, The creepy twins are like, oh, actually, we were a little hungry. They're gonna eat them. They're gonna eat these kids. So Feyre breaks into their minds and is like,
yeah, hey guys, it's me. You really don't want to do this. You really want to go home. Trust me. Leave.
And they're kind of like, not convinced. So then Feyre is like, okay, you asked for it. And she shows them like a supercut of all of the horrifying things that she has seen in Prythian. The Naga, the Bogue, the Adder. And so finally they're like, ooh, okay, bye. And they peace out. They leave, okay? Thank you, Feyre. Good job. This is when Jurian actually pops up. He was kind of in the background watching this happen. And he actually thanks Feyre, kind of pulls her aside so that the creepy twins don't see. So he's like, listen, Feyre, I don't like you, but I appreciate what you just did there. Because even though now he's something else, he's not Fae, he's just like this resurrected guy, okay? But he used to be human, very involved in the human side of the war. So he's like, I know that I'm on Hybern's side now, but like there's still a huge part of me that hates everything that he stands for. So I really appreciate you sticking up for the humans, okay? You're a better ex-human than I am. So Feyre's little like house of cards isn't going to be that hard to topple because nobody really likes each other, okay? Tamlin hates Jurian. Jurian hates Hybern. Everybody hates the creepy twins. It's wobbling, all right? This whole allyship, they're all the weakest link. Goodbye. But if you thought that that was a happy ending for the Children of the Blessed, sorry to tell you, they're like camping, right, as they're going across the wall. One day, they find some bodies, hard to identify, because the creepy twins followed them and caught up with them and had their little snack. They weren't kidding. They really were hungry. And Feyre is done playing nice. She finds out about this, and we hear about it later in the form of Tamlin yelling at her. So we get back to the Spring Court, and Tamlin calls for a meeting and is like, okay, Feyre, let me get this straight. You and Lucien wrangled the Bogue, caught it in a trap, and then set it loose in their tent? Am I hearing this correctly? Our ally? Is this diplomatic to you? Like, do you feel like that was a good move? And Feyre and Lucien are both kind of like, Tamlin doesn't like that they feel no remorse, so he just keeps yelling. Eventually, he yells at Lucien to just get out, and then he just goes in on Feyre, and Feyre stands her ground, all right? She's a high lady now. She knows exactly what buttons to press. She's like, you allied with Hybern because you're a weak little man, blah, 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 blah. And you know what he does? He explodes in rage. And do you remember when this scene happened last time? Something about Feyre's magic shielded her and kept her safe. This time, she leaves the shields down. That means when the entire place explodes, she gets ripped open with like the shrapnel of the study. Lucien hears this because he was like right outside the door, and he immediately runs in with 2 of Tamlin's close guards. He's like, what on earth did you do? And they're just all looking at this like poor little Feyre all bloody on the ground, right? Tamlin is 100% the bad guy in this situation, obviously. And so game, set, match, Spring Court is in chaos. Lucien's mad at Tamlin. Even his guards are like, woo, man, it's a mess. This is when Rhysand gives a little tug on the mating bond and is kind of like, hey girl, what happened? I know better than to tell you to be careful or to come home, but I want you home soon, and I want him dead for putting a hand on you. And Feyre's like, it wasn't his hand, it was his magic. And he says, I'm glad you have a sense of humor about it, because I certainly don't. And then they send each other dirty mental images. Feyre has one final trick up her sleeve. She believes that she has pretty much shattered most of the trust within the Spring Court, right? She's got one more thing that she's going to do. And honestly, it's confusing. Remember how I said that Ianthe, there was something about the summer solstice where normally Ianthe is the one who gets blessed and then the magic chose Feyre, right? That whole thing like really kind of unnerved Ianthe. Already people don't trust her, and now she's not getting blessed. She's really obsessed with her status. So she's like really looking for any opportunity to kind of be the hero and get back in everybody's good graces. And Feyre knows this. It's kind of shaky about how she actually arranges this to happen, but essentially she inspires Ianthe to take one of the keys from the guard shack and opens one of the gates so that the Naga can come in to the Spring Court. Ianthe is there to stop the Naga, and thus she is the hero of the day. That doesn't seem like such a big deal, right? But what Feyre knows is that Tamlin is going to punish his guards for this, right? Like, how could they not notice that the key went missing? How could they not notice that the gate was open? Why did Ianthe have to do your job, guards? So he makes this huge public thing of screaming at his guards. He's going to punish them because no one will admit to doing it because they didn't do it. He is getting ready to whip his guards. He has the weapon in his hand, and Feyre uses her mental powers to make them tell the truth, which is that Ianthe got the key, right? So now Ianthe's in trouble, check, because she just got caught, and then Tamlin's in trouble because he was just going to whip his guards, the people who have been so loyal to him. These are the same people that he's been sending to the human realm to be killed. All of those guys who like went into the woods as wolves so that hopefully Feyre could kill them, you know, sacrificing their lives for this court. Those are those guards. Okay, and Tamlin was just about to do that to them. Are you kidding me? And then on top of that, remember the guards had just witnessed him hurting his poor little love of his life, right? So they're already like 100% now. They're on Feyre's side, right? Because she's standing there in the crowd like looking really like, I can't believe this is happening. She looks really upset for the guards, right? She's got them on their team. That's what she wanted to happen. That's what this scene was supposed to do. It was supposed to end there. But the princess comes with another plan. The creepy twins like a little violence. They like a little blood, okay? So they found that whole thing to be quite boring. So the princess is like, well, you know, either way, your guards still messed up. Like, it doesn't matter if your high priestess stole from them. Like, your guards still messed up. So it would be weak of you to not hurt them. We know Tam Tam does not like to be called weak, so he's like, yeah, okay. The whip's thunderous crack snapped through the barracks, the estate, through the very foundations of the court. Oh yeah, baby. All right. Tamlin has no allies. Ianthe, no allies. Everybody's Team Feyre. Are we Team Feyre? Okay. She got what she wanted and then some, okay? The next day, they are going to be heading out to the wall again, and they're going to be kind of camping for many days. So she is packing, and this is when Alice drops some news. She is finally going to go back to the summer court, and Feyre's like, well, okay, just like, don't really mention my name, because remember, Tarkeen still has like a price on her head. You know, she's got that blood ruby. And Alice is like, you will always have one friend in the summer court. And Feyre says, and you will always have one in mine. She knew which court I meant and did not look afraid. Once they are at camp by the wall, Feyre continues to get so much information out of the creepy twins because they think she's really dumb. And they also think that they're really smart, and those are the easiest people to manipulate. So they're just like,
yeah, we have this many forces, and we're going to attack here, and we're going to do this, and this, and this.
And Feyre's just like, And she is sending that right up to the Night Court, okay? Our little spy. But more than that, I had people who lost faith in their high priestess. I had guards who were beginning to rebel against their high lord. I had Hybern royals doubting the strength of their allies, and I had primed this court to fall. Not from outside forces, but its own. And I had to be clear of it before my last piece fell into place. So this is when Feyre's like, okay, I've accomplished it all. Got the information I wanted. Fucked up the Spring Court. Time for me to bounce. And she's literally just gonna leave. Okay? As she is walking out of her tent, ready to just run into the woods, she hears Ianthe talking to Lucien, still not leaving him alone. Feyre notices that she has the like chains that she was going to be using on Rhysand. Remember from his memory with his experience with her? She's going to like chain up Lucien. And Feyre is like, I can't let this slide. So she runs into this clearing in the woods where she sees them and takes over Ianthe's mind. First order of business, she makes her let go of Lucien, so Lucien is now free. Second order of business, she makes her pick up a rock and start breaking her own hand. So Lucien's kind of like, huh? Okay. But also, thank you. But also, where the fuck are you going? But before Feyre can answer, chaos erupts because the creepy twins show up, and that's never good. This is where it gets a little bit confusing. The entire time that she has been at the spring court, Feyre has noticed that it's been a little bit more difficult to communicate through the bond. Like, she can clearly still talk to Rhysand, but it just feels a little fuzzy, and she's assuming that it's just because she is like as far as she can possibly be from the night court. You know, they've never really used the bond this far before, so she's like, oh, you know, that's probably it. Wrong, girl. You know why it's been fuzzy? Creepy twins. Creepy twins have been feeding everybody itty bits of like poison. I think it's called Feybane, and it essentially gets rid of your powers for a little bit, whatever you have consumed it. So Feyre kind of like licks her lips and she's like, God damn it. I had an apple for breakfast and it was poison. So now she knows that she is on a time crunch. Any second now, her powers are going to wear off because she's just been continuously eating it. So she's like, all right, we got to do something now. So her first option is she could just winnow. She could just get the fuck away, right? But that would leave Lucien all by himself, and they would 100% either kill Lucien or like ramble around in his brain and all of this stuff. And she kind of looks at Lucien and he's like, yeah, I know, I'm fucked too, because he is also unable to use his powers because he's been eating. I mean, they gotta eat, right? So he also doesn't have any powers, and she's like, well, I'm not just gonna leave you helpless. Buckle up, my friend. She does some kind of night explosion. Everything goes black, and she winnows, starts fighting Prince Dagden. Lucien jumps in and starts fighting Brana. And eventually, long story short, it's like very confusing because there's a lot of like winnowing, and like Feyre has also been training with Cassian, so like her knife skills are rad. Here's what happens. Basically, Lucien beheads the princess. Feyre stabs the prince in the eyeball, and she looks over at Ianthe, who's just watching this in shock, like jaw on the ground, hand mangled. And Feyre says, tell everyone that I killed them in self-defense and that you and Tamlin just watched while they hurt me and did nothing. And now I'm fleeing and I'm going to save the spring court. Obviously, she is mind controlling Ianthe. And now it's time for Feyre to finally exit. Lucien is like, you're going to the night court, aren't you? Take me with you. And Feyre's like, no, I would rather not. And Lucien's like, listen, you're not going to stand a chance without me. You can't winnow. None of us have our powers. Where are you gonna go? Summer court wants to kill you. You can't get through the autumn court without me. He's like, come on, Feyre. Like, you know this is a good idea. Road trip, all right? There was no time for argument, as Tamlin and the others would have heard the shouting by now. Don't make me regret this, I told him. And we ran into the woods. Welcome to part 2, Curse Breakers. So we are making a run for it. Lucien and Feyre have run out of the spring court, and like I said, remember, she can't go through the summer court because Tarquin still has a wanted sign out for her. So where do we have to go? Through the autumn court. Lucien does not like that idea, but it's literally their only shot, and he has the advantage of this is like his backyard, right? But if you think that his brothers and father are his only enemy there, think again. Remember how his true love got killed by his family? By the way, this is his daddy, Baron, and his lover was just a random autumn court lady. So the other people of the autumn court hate Lucien because they see him as someone who caused one of their own to get killed. So they literally can't be seen by anybody. Anyone would turn them in. But luckily, Lucien finds this little hunting lodge for them to stay in. We get a quick little conversation where Lucien is like, I always knew you were lying. And Feyre's like, okay. And Lucien's really not super pleased with this because he's going with Feyre, number one, to help her, but number two, he really wants to see his mate. That's like his number one priority now. Tamlin used to be, but he has been replaced. But still in the back of his mind, like Lucien isn't trying to betray Tamlin in leaving. So he's kind of grumpy in the fact that he is being torn between all of these people, okay? And it's been a couple days of them traveling and both of them still have 0 power left. So that's great. And they, of course, get found by the worst people, not average Autumn Court folk, but his brothers. This is his brother, Eris. Eris, if you remember, is the one that Mor was promised to marry. And then when she got like ruined by Cassian, her family dropped her off in the woods for him to find. And I guess he just like never came to collect. She just woke up bloodied and had a nail stuck in her. You know, we don't love this dude, okay? Even though Ivy, man, she draws great characters, okay? When Feyre wakes up in their hiding place, his brothers already have Lucien all tied up. She is thinking like, okay, do I fight off? There's 3 of them. Do we learn the other 2 brothers' names? I don't think they matter. But anyway, there's 3 brothers. And she's like, okay, I cannot take on 3 of these guys. When she suddenly feels a little snap. And she's like, whew, the magic's back. And it's not back in full, but like she gets this kind of crazy look in her eyes and she looks at Lucien and he's like, like he kind of felt it too. He doesn't have powers, but like he knows something's brewing in his little friend, okay? So he's like, come on, girl, pull something out of this. Somehow she's able to break Lucien free and they just start running because they still don't have enough strength to actually winnow. They left all of their stuff in the cave, so they're now running through Prythian with 0 supplies, okay? They keep running until finally they make it to essentially the winter court. They're like scaling mountains. They're nearly freezing to death every single night because they don't have any supplies. So when they finally get to the winter court, they're like, okay, we just have to get through this and then we'll be in the dawn court. Because remember in Prythian, the seasonal courts, summer, spring, winter, autumn, tend to ally with each other. And then I think they're called solar courts, dawn, day, and night court. They tend to ally. So they're like, listen, if we just get through the winter court, we get to the dawn court, maybe they'll, pull some strings, because if we get caught in the winter court, they'll probably return us to Tamlin and that will be no good. They start crossing this lake of ice and they're like, this is it. This is our last thing. When who shows up behind them but 3 figures with fire coming out of their hands because the Autumn Court has fire. And yes, the brothers just caught up to them. I don't know. They just start running across the lake because that's literally all that they can do. When Feyre is kind of like, I don't have them back 100%, but like, I've got enough power in me that I'm not running. Remember in the last book, she was like, I don't want to run anymore. I'm a fight, not a flight kind of girl. And what does she pull out of her hat? Her winter court powers. What a place to debut them. She starts freezing the lake every time his brothers melt it, because that's what they're trying to do, is they're just like running behind them, like melting the lake with their fire, which is an interesting choice for her to make because remember, they're still trying to keep the fact that she has other powers quiet, especially from Lucien's family, because Lucien has said time and time again, if my daddy finds out that you took a piece of his power, he will kill you. Straight up. But even with her powers back, she is pretty much no match for 3 High Lord sons, and they end up catching up to her and they just start beating the shit out of them. I think Feyre is getting like slammed into the ice over and over again. I mean, it's ugly. She's bloody, and then she feels this shadow come over her and she's like, this is it. This is death. But it's not death. It's an Illyrian warrior. Who shows up? Azriel. And you know who else is there? Boom, Cassian. Apparently the wrath on Cassian's face is world ending. And so Feyre at this point, she is being held by Eris, and Cassian just kind of looks at her like, girl, have we not spent months training for this shit? What are you doing? And Feyre's like, oh yeah, I'm a fighter. And she just like disarms Eris and like slams him into the ice, and it's really satisfying. And now they're all fighting at this point. It's a little bit more even, right? We've got 4 against 3. When Feyre all of a sudden says, stop. And for some reason, everybody listens to her. And she releases a glamour that she has been holding ever since she got back to the spring court. She releases the tattoo. My question is, all right, isn't his little eyeball thingy supposed to see through all the glamours? So shouldn't he have known immediately that she was a High Lady? Anyway, Feyre debuts her High Lady tattoo, and the guys are kind of like, what is that? Like, cool ink? What do you stopped our battle for this? And she's like, I am High Lady of the Night Court. To which Lucien's brothers are all like, there aren't any High Ladies. And she just says, there is now. Which means she outranks these suckers. They're just little sons of the High Lord. She's a High Lady. So if they were to kill her, I mean, already it would be bad news if they killed the lover of either Rhysand or Tamlin, or both. I mean, Zinger. Woo, that'd be bad. But if they killed a High Lady, that is 100% cause for war, and they would be in the wrong. So other High Lords would go against them, you know? So she's kind of like, all right, boys, settle down. We're gonna go now, so have fun on the ice, and see you later. Feyre, Lucien, Cassian, and Azriel blast back to the Night Court. Okay, so when we get to the Night Court, more is there. Rhysand was like off doing something, but essentially the second that Feyre got all of her powers back on the ice or whatever, he felt her, because remember that like power poison or whatever was blocking her, and he immediately called up the Bat Boys and was like, go get my mate, bring her home. So he'll be here in a second, but that's why they were like wandering through Prythian without any help. And this is when Lucien decides if he's gonna die because they're in the townhouse. Basically, his next words could be his last. They're sort of not sure how he's gonna react, and everyone's just kind of standing there like, because they brought him to Valeris, right? And his first words surprise everyone. He's standing in the townhouse and he just says, there are children laughing. Because he can hear Valeris from the house, and there are like children playing in the streets and they're laughing. And remember, even though people vaguely know about Valeris, they still think that the Night Court is evil, okay? So he's just standing there like, his whole sense of reality is like slipping through his fingers. Apparently everyone's like, good answer, you know, good reaction, my dude. He can live to see another couple of hours. So Lucien is just staring out the window and he's just like, so this is where you live? Feyre's like, yeah. And you're the High Lady of the Night Court? And before she can answer, someone says, indeed she is. Feyre's blood stopped when she heard the voice. Yes, she turns around and Rhysand is leaning on the archway leading into the sitting room, arms crossed, wings nowhere to be seen. Her legs turn to jello. She falls to her knees. He somehow crosses the room and grabs her, and they just hug each other, crying. It's sweet. And he literally just picks her up and turns around and is like, bye guys, have fun, we'll be back. And they leave. Remember when the first time that Feyre was taken to the Night Court and she came back to the Spring Court, Tamlin also hugged her and cried and was like, oh my God, I'm so glad that you're back. Key difference is he started asking her for a ton of information. And so as Rhysand is literally carrying her to the bedroom, Feyre's like, okay, do you want to know all my info, all the stuff I haven't been able to tell you? And he's like, I was thinking about doing something else. Are you down? Like, what?
My Birkin. Another Birkin. But what makes these two Birkins different?
But to be fair, they do talk about a few things before they finally get to the bed, including Feyre asks, where are my sisters, by the way? And Rhysand says that they are up at the House of the Wind, and she's like, you know, how are they? And he's just like, they're safe. So it doesn't sound positive. I mean, we knew Nesta was going to be pissy, but like we have no idea how Elaine has reacted to being High Fae. He's like, do you want to go see them? And this is where Sarah J. Maas makes it really clear how strong of a man he is, that he is going to stop in the middle of his sexy time to let his wife see her sisters. And Feyre's like, actually, no, I don't really want to see my sisters right now. Continue. They go to the bed. They go to the bubble bath. I am a Sarah J. Maas smut anti-fan, so none of that from me. So we're back in the dining room, and this is where we get the vibes that continue for the rest of the book, which is the inner circle love that Feyre and Rhysand are like ready to jump each other's bones at all times. They come back in, obviously having just hung out in the bedroom and the bathtub, and Cassian is sitting there like wiggling his eyebrows, you know, like they love it. It's a thing that we get to read, okay? But the person who is really not happy about this is Lucien, and he looks at Feyre's finger and he's like, what the hell? Because while they were up after the bath, I assume, they exchanged rings. Remember how he told us the whole story about the Weaver? She was like, don't give it to me until we figure this out, before they went to go see Hybern, and then she never came back from that meeting. She finally got the ring back, okay? And Lucien is like literally snarling at them. He is so disgusted by this whole thing. This doesn't go unnoticed by Rhysand, and he's kind of like, oh, hey, Lucien, didn't get to chat with you. If you even so much as look wrong at one of my members of the inner circle, I have very imaginative ways of ending you. So like, maybe don't, okay? He's like, I'm gonna go easy on you for a little bit because I know that you think that the Night Court is evil and you've thought that your mate was being like tortured by us. But as you can see, we are not evil people. You hear our children laughing in the streets, all right? They're not paid actors. I'll give you a little bit of time to adjust, but my time is short, all right? That doesn't really calm Lucien down at all. So Rhysand says, I will only say this once. And he's using his High Lord of the Night Court voice. So even Lucien is kind of like, I suspected Feyre was my mate before I ever knew she was involved with Tamlin. And when I learned of that, if it made her happy, I was willing to step back. And Lucien's like, okay, but what about you coming to our house and taking her away on her wedding day? And Feyre cuts in and she's like, you saw me. I was going to leave anyway. I was gonna call it off. And Rhysand says, I was willing to lose my mate to another male. I was willing to let her marry if it brought her joy. What I was not willing to do was let her suffer. He tells Lucien, like, listen, I felt her terror through the bond. As someone who now has a mate, I think you can understand what that feels like. You would do anything to protect her, right? He continues and says that Feyre did not dishonor or betray Tamlin. I revealed the mating bond months later and she gave me hell for it. But now that you found your mate in a similar situation, perhaps you will try to understand how it felt. And if you can't be bothered with that, I hope you're wise enough to keep your mouth shut. He's walking on thin ice, okay? Everybody kind of wants to kill him. Feyre, even though they're loosely friends, Feyre's not extremely happy with him at the moment. So, watch your back, babe. Lucien, be smart. This is when they decide to all fly up to House of the Wind to finally check on the sisters. And they bring Lucien, but they kind of step out onto the balcony before walking in. So Lucien kind of pulls Feyre aside and is like, listen, this is weird as hell, okay? I have been told my entire life that the Night Court is evil. Rhysand is a really good actor, okay? This is gonna take me a really, really long time to get over. So I'm gonna stand out here, and if Elaine wants to see me, let me know, but like, I'm gonna give her some space. And Feyre's like, good idea. First sister they find is Nesta, because she is in the library curled up on the couch with a little book. Cassian's giving her shit for it because she's actually reading a romance book. She enjoys smut, this girl. She is still a pill, transforming into an immortal being, has not changed that at all. So she just like looks up at Feyre and is like, oh, it's you. Feyre's kind of like, how are you? You know, and she's like, you know, if you don't have anything interesting to tell me, can I get back to my book? Because... And Feyre doesn't have anything to say. She just wanted to check on Nesta. So she's kind of like, okay. And she notices that Nesta is now wearing her hair in a very particular way that hides her ears. She still really is not happy to be a fairy. And she also is like, by the way, who's gonna tell Dad? Because remember, their dad is a merchant and he went off to do business with all of his ships. So he's gone and he's been gone. And now he's gonna come home to an empty house and all of his daughters are fairies. Who's gonna break the news? Anyway, they are gonna figure that out when it comes to that. Feyre's also like, how's Elaine? Not good. Elaine is not eating. I don't think she's sleeping. She is not leaving her room. Because remember, she was engaged and she was like really excited to get married. And now she's the thing that her fiance hates the most, which is a fairy. So she's like really cut up. And Feyre's like, well, Lucien, her mate, is here. And Nesta's like, you don't say mate don't say that word. And like, he's not going anywhere near her. And Feyre's like, well, you know, I think that Elain should be able to choose. So like, I'm going to go talk to her. And Nesta just goes straight back to her book. She turns around to head to the stairs to go find Elain when she sees Cassian. And I wondered why no one had mentioned to me what now shone in Cassian's eyes as he gazed at my sister. The sorrow, the longing. To be continued. When we get up to Elain, she is the exact opposite energy of Nesta. Nesta's this firecracker, and Elain is described as being hollow. Again, not eating, not sleeping, not leaving her room, barely talking. She's just staring out the window, looking like a corpse, to be honest. When Feyre asks things, she answers them really kind of dreamily, almost like she's not here. And she's just sort of like, I was gonna be married next week, and now I can't go home. And she just goes on and on about how horribly sad she is. And Feyre kind of mentions like, you know, like Lucien's here. Would you like to see him? And Elain just kind of looks over her shoulder and we all turn. And who's standing in the doorway? Lucien. And by the devastation on his face, I knew he'd heard every word. Poor baby, nobody wants him here. It's so sad. But then Rhysand is like, hey Feyre, we've got work to do. We've got to go. And so they're like, listen, Lucien, we're going to leave you at House of the Wind, but you can't bring my sisters outside and you can't go on their floor. Like Nesta's library and Elain's room, they're on a totally different floor of the house. So they're like, you can't go on this floor. If they come down, maybe you can talk to them. I doubt they want to talk to you. Sit in the kitchen. All right, we'll be back. And off they go. Okay, so the whole inner circle heads to Amren's apartment. Okay, Amren's back. And Feyre is kind of like, did we make a mistake leaving Lucien home alone with my sisters? And Mor is like, oh yeah, I give him like 30 minutes before he goes up and tries to see them. Like the mating bond is just too strong to fight. So like, we'll be quick. We'll go check on them in a second. And Cassian's like, yeah, we got to go back because I think Nesta's going to kill him, even though she's refusing all of my training. And this is when Feyre kind of is like, ooh, this is my in. And she's like, yeah, it seems like you've been talking to Nesta a lot, you know, like offering to train her and stuff. And he's just sort of like, yeah, I go up there every single day. And he's like, you know, she's not very pleasant, but I don't blame her because he's like, she was violated. Like her body is no longer hers, you know, and she just feels sickened by that. So he's like, you know, she can be a pill, but like, I get it. I'm not going to give up on her, you know, and the next time I see Hybern, I'm going to peel off his skin. And Rhysand is like, okay, I'm sure he would really enjoy that, but like, we've got a war, so like, let's focus. Let's talk about the information that Feyre has been giving us. Remember when the creepy twins were giving Feyre information about like, yeah, we have this many troops and we allied with this place and this place, okay? It's not just Prythian and Hybern and the mortal realms. There are like other kingdoms or whatever. So Hybern has been reaching out, trying to ally with these other places. That's really bad news because Amren has been looking into it, and every single one of those kingdoms has something that would totally turn the tide of the war. A ton of soldiers, or they've got a ton of money or something like that. If Hybern got any of them, Prythian's done. Like there's, even with all of Rhysand's armies, like they're screwed. But Rhysand and the inner circle haven't just been sitting on their butts while Feyre was working. They have been going to these kingdoms and doing sort of what Feyre did with the Spring Court, but just on a larger scale. They've been spreading lies, making all those other kingdoms really nervous. It's like they don't want to ally with Hybern because now they're so focused on just protecting their own borders. So they don't want to go to war and risk any of their territories being lost, you know. Good job on them, but they've got to like make sure it's still up in the air. Azriel has been searching for Miriam. Do you remember Jurian's ex-lover Miriam, who is now like, they helped her live in hiding? They have a really big army and it would be really nice if they came and helped, you know, because Draken, the prince, is like a seraphim or whatever. So he's like this angel thing and he's got an army of angels. So they're like, that would be sweet to have on our hands. But Azriel is like, I went looking for them. Like, remember, they helped hide her, so they know where she is. And he's like, the place I went was abandoned. Like, I could not find them. I'm still searching. But like, as of right now, count the angel squad. out. Another interesting thing that Feyre told them is that, remember the creepy twins, they were walking along the wall trying to find the best place to hit it with the cauldron because they needed a hole in the wall because the cauldron isn't strong enough to knock down the wall. And they're listening to this and they're kind of like, that doesn't sound like it's a recharging issue. It sounds like the cauldron's broken. Like they wouldn't need a hole if they just waited long enough for the cauldron to get back to full power. So it seems like something maybe happened to the cauldron. That's when Amren comes up with the big idea of, hey Feyre, why don't we ask your sisters? You know, they were made by the cauldron, so like they should be able to help us find it, and then maybe we can steal it, nip it in the bud right there. We don't have to do the war thing. Feyre says, like, under no circumstances am I letting them get involved. I don't want them to get hurt. I'm not even gonna broach the subject with them. Next idea, Amren, find something else. And this is when Amren says, you sound just like Tamlin. Feyre felt the words like a blow. Mor is furious. She is enraged. She just starts screaming at Amren. And this is really the first time we've seen like infighting in the inner circle, but they do actually bicker. But Mor is like, how dare you say that, Amren? Like, if you're cranky because you're hungry, like go find food, but don't take it out on us. That was horrible. How dare you say that? You've got to apologize to Feyre, blah, blah, blah. And so they scream at each other for a little bit when finally Feyre is like, no, you know, I mean, she could have worded it a hell of a lot better, but I think she's right. I'm gonna at least give them the choice. Cassian flies Feyre home because remember his wings were shredded and all that stuff, so he needs to strengthen his wings, so she's basically like helping him weightlift. He is carrying her home, and that's when she can kind of ask a little bit more because we're all curious about this dynamic, all right? Feyre's like, do you really think that I should ask Nesta to help us? And he's like, oh yeah, like she's gonna go crazy if she stays in that house any longer. She is reading too much smut. We have got to save her. Like, we got to get her out. And she's like, you know, when she came out of that cauldron, we all felt it, right? That she had some kind of crazy power. She's like, have you seen that recently? Cassian's like, no, I haven't seen anything of it. Like, no powers to speak of, but I definitely feel it, especially when she's pissed at me, which is pretty much all the time. And Feyre's like, yeah, about that. Like, even before, like when they first met, they were always kind of like teasing each other and pretty on edge. But this now feels different. Like, it feels like Nesta fucking hates his guts. And Feyre's like, what happened? Like, am I missing something? And Cassian just shrugs and is like, she's never gonna forgive me for not keeping my promise. And Feyre's like, what promise? Remember when Cassian gave that full speech about how he was willing to lay down his life to save them? Nobody's gonna touch Nesta or Elaine. He didn't save Nesta and Elaine. And he's like, honestly, I think Nesta's more pissed that I didn't help Elaine. Nesta's always gonna be pissy, but like the fact that Elaine is a high fae, oh man, she's angry. And Feyre's like, Cassian, your wings were shredded. Like, you were seconds from death and you were crawling towards them. And he's like, still didn't keep my promise. And Feyre is kind of like, that sounds toxic, but like if they're both, you know, whatever makes the two of them happy, all right? And so when they land at the house, Feyre's like, why do you bother? Like, Nesta is such a pill and she's like angry at you for something that you couldn't control. Why do you deal with it? His eyes shuddered and I thought he wouldn't answer. But then he said quietly as we headed for the dining room, because I can't stay away. Now it's time for dinner. We're all back at the House of the Wind, which means that Lucien and Nesta are joining us. Elaine doesn't eat, remember? And Mor is trying her goddamn best. She is like tap dancing on the table, trying to get on Nesta's good side. Nesta will not bite. Amren walks in and Nesta is not scared and she's just literally like, why are your eyes glowy? Amren is sort of like, ooh, I like it. You feel just like me, you know, because she has this like ancient, scary power lurking under her skin. And Nesta's just like, no, I don't think we're anything alike. And Amren just kind of smiles and she's like, when you erupt, girl, make sure the whole world feels it because I'm so excited for this. Lucien is also having a rough time here because this is like incredibly casual, this dinner. Even though he was BFFs with Tamlin, Tammy was still obsessed with kind of keeping that hierarchy of High Lord court life going on. And Lucien kind of asks, Lucien is sort of like, why aren't you at the head of the table, Rhys? And Feyre's like, you know, you get used to it. Asriel's really the only one that's polite. And Cassian is like, mouthful of food, like, we're nice. And Mor is like, okay, that might be true, but like, you don't have to say it like we're heathens. I mean, we have manners, good lord. But then Rhysand is like, okay, team, time for work. They know that the Night Court and the Illyrian forces are not enough to deal with Hybern, so we have to talk to the other High Lords. And they're basically going to send out invitations to all the other courts, try to have a meeting, and try to ally all of Prythian together to go against Hybern. And this is when Lucien is kind of like, can I make a suggestion? And Rhysand is like, whoa, nobody asks. You know, the inner circle just says shit. The fact that you asked me, of course, let's hear it, Lucien. What do you have to say? And he's like, are you inviting everybody? And Rhysand is like, that was the point, yeah. And he's like, I think it would be very smart to check if my dad knows anything about Feyre's powers. Because remember how she was like refreezing the ice when her brothers were following her, right? Lucien's like, there's an itty bitty chance that my brothers aren't smart enough to like put that together or tell my dad. But like, if my dad knows, he would very likely ally with Hybern simply so that he could kill Feyre and get his power back. So I would highly recommend, before having this meeting and bringing Feyre, because she's the High Lady, so she's gonna come to this meeting, definitely recommend you go check on what intel my dad has. And Rhysand is like, that's actually a very good idea. Thank you. Why don't you and Asriel work together, because Asriel's the spy master. Okay, so good job, Lucien. Excellent work. But now there's one more thing that we have to do. There is like some kind of legal mumbo jumbo, I don't know. Basically, Rhysand can't just take the Court of Nightmares forces. Mor's father, who is named Keir, he has his own army, and Rhysand has to ask. He can't just take over. So he's like, we gotta go back to the Court of Nightmares. I'm gonna ask in a way that's not asking. We're not taking no for an answer. So get ready for another trip to the Court of Nightmares. That's on the list. And then Feyre out of the blue is like, by the way, I want to learn how to fly. And everyone's just like, the fuck? Like, what now? She's like, if we're gonna fight Hybern, I assume we're going to be flying alongside the Illyrians, and like, I want to help. The Bat Boys can fly. I don't want to be sitting on the sidelines. And she sort of waits for Rhys to say no, because why the hell would he let his mate fly with the army in battle? And then Cassian just kind of goes like, okay. And he's like, I don't think that there is technically enough time. Like, it takes us decades to master flying. We have months at best and weeks at worst. And then Rhys is like, you know what? Like, fuck it. Let's teach her everything that we can in that time. You know, like a day could make a difference, right? He's thinking of it as like self-defense, not necessarily flying with the front lines, but like, could she fly to escape something? And Asriel, who's been quiet this entire time, is just like, I'm gonna teach her. Rhys and Cassian taught me to fly much later, right? He has this whole backstory of like his evil brothers burnt his hands and he wasn't allowed to train, and so he actually like never learned how to fly until much later in the war camps, you know? And Cassian's like, no man, like I got it, you're really busy, I've taught her how to fight, I'll taught her how to fly. But Asriel's like, it's not the same when you're older. Like when you're young, you're kind of like, let me jump off this cliff. But he's like, Feyre's old enough to be scared of dying, right? So there's like a totally different skill set you need to learn, like just conquering fear. So I'm gonna take this one, guys. Step back, I'm the teacher now. Now that that's settled, this is when Feyre just straight up turns to Nesta and is like, listen, this is the stuff that's going on with the Cauldron, we need your help. Are you gonna do it? And she's like, Hybern and the queens are still alive, right? And Feyre's like, yeah. She's like, if at the end of this war you can promise me that I will have all of their heads on a plate in front of me, I'll help you. And Amren's like, ooh, and I'd love to help train you. Like, girl, this is exciting. So Nesta's like, count me in, as long as I can like bathe in Hybern's blood afterwards. But Feyre has one more favor to ask. She's like, at this meeting with the High Lords, it would be really great if you came for two reasons. Number one, to show that we have this incredibly powerful person that could be a real asset to us in the war, right? High Lords are more likely to join our side if they think they're going to win. And number two, you can tell your story. And that might really encourage some of the High Lords to join and fight because of like how clearly horrific this guy is and the lengths that he's willing to go to use his power, right? And Nesta's like, no. Like straight up, just next, nope. Nothing's gonna convince me. Sorry, bye. She gets really angry, says some really nasty things, and runs off and slams the door. Feyre just kind of slumps in her chair, and Mor just goes like, thunk, and hands her a wine bottle and is like, it's okay to drink straight from the bottle. After dinner, Rhysand and Feyre go on a little walk around Valeris, and they start talking about how do you balance it, like being friends and family with your closest people, like how do you ask them for things or kind of order things and still keep this, you know, like just how do you make that work? He's like, honestly, you fuck up a lot, but we love each other and like we do everything with respect. Doesn't necessarily get easier, but like you get used to it. Talk kind of turns to Lucien and how Feyre's like, you know, he's my friend, but I know that he's not thinking clearly because he's loyal to Tamlin, but he's loyal to Elaine. What do? I have no idea. And Rhysand is just kind of listening and he's just like, welcome to the game of being a high lady. I'm getting way too into this. I bought a little fairy crown, and if you don't like it, I'm so sorry, but it already made a mark on my forehead, and so I may never be able to take it off. Speaking of being a high lady, we get an interesting scene with Cassian. Feyre starts training again, and he is in a mood. When aren't these boys? But Cassian's pretty good at telling us what he's mad about. So he just straight up says, I'm super pissed that you didn't tell me that you were a high lady. Because remember when they did the whole thing with Hybern and the Cauldron and all that stuff, the only people who knew that she was a high lady was Rhysand and whoever the fuck priestess did it, right? Feyre's like, I don't understand how that's different. You know, like I'm Rhysand's mate. Shouldn't you like love me the same? And Cassian's like, ugh, Rhysand is the High Lord, right? He is the baddest baddie, most important person ever. Even though the inner circle is pretty casual, Cassian, Azriel, Mor, and Amren, their entire goal, end game, is to keep him happy, healthy, and alive. Because by protecting him, they're protecting the High Court. And he's like, so you being High Lady, like it's not just like you're my friend or you're like mate of important guy. You are like a symbol of my country, okay? You are mine. So me not knowing and me not going to like the end of the earth to protect you made me feel really bad. And he's like, and you know what? Rhysand feels really shitty about it too. He doesn't talk about it, but he was pretty panicked when he went back to the Spring Court. At least I speak my mind, okay? We love a man who is in tune and communicates his emotions. He also says that this is the shit that Rhysand pulled 50 years ago with Amarantha. Remember how he went to that party by himself because he didn't want to tell anybody that he was like gonna assassinate Amarantha? He does this shit. Like he, even though they would die to help him, Rhysand is like, if he can do it alone, he'll try and do it so as to not risk people. And Cassian is like, that's just not how high lady lordship works. I'm supposed to die for you. He's really into the whole dying for somebody, but he's basically like, I just want you to know this, Feyre. First, because I'm pissed at you, but second, because this is the shit Rhysand eats up. He lives for self-sacrifice, and we're going into a war. So Cassian's like, I want you to watch him like a hawk, okay? Because he's gonna pull some shit. Is it foreshadowing? Who knows? This is when Nesta pulls up to the training ring and Cassian goes all like googly-eyed and is like, oh, you want to train? And Nesta's like, no. And Cassian's like, oh, what are you scared to train? And Nesta's like, why would I be afraid of an oversized bat who throws temper tantrums? Feyre immediately down the bond is like,
Rhysand, get me out of here. It's happening again. I don't want to be here.
Rhysand is in a meeting, so he chuckles and is like, all right, I'll send Azriel, the only one that we like. Azriel shows up and it is time for Feyre's first flying lesson. And the flying lesson is basically just her working muscles that she's literally never used before. She doesn't do much. She like barely gets her wings out. And end scene. This is where we get introduced to the library. And remember how I mentioned that this series has a couple of questionable, problematic scenes? Welcome. I'm gonna let you form your own opinions, okay? So here we go. The House of the Wind has a really giant library that Feyre has not been introduced to yet. And when she walks in, she describes it as like a cavern going down. Just this hole in the earth. And it's just like shelves going down, going down, going down. She, pretty reasonably, I think, asks, what's at the bottom? And Rhys says, you know, I dared Cassian to fly down there once and, not good. He came back up faster than I've ever seen him fly, white as death. He never told me what he saw, and at first I thought it was a joke. So when I said I was going to go down and see for myself, he threatened to tie me to a chair. He said some things were better left unseen. It's been 200 years and he still won't talk about it, and if you mention it, he goes pale and shaky and won't talk for a few hours. Cool. Okay. We also get some information about the priestesses who are in here. It's a very long explanation. It's multiple pages, but basically the priestesses who are in this library have come here because they were victims of either horrific violence or sexual abuse at the hands of men. And we get some pretty graphic descriptions of what happens to some of these women. And so they are here because it's a peaceful place. They control who's allowed to come in, you know. So Sarah J. Maas makes the very interesting choice of, after having 5 or 6 pages of that, then having them get into the reading nook where they're going to start studying and have them have like sexy time. But before they can get like too gross with their library sex, which comes up multiple times in this book, by the way, Rhysand is like, I gotta go, okay? He winnows to another part of the library so that they can control themselves and focus, and he's like, let's research for 2 hours and reconvene. What they find out is basically that they need all of the Prythian lords. Like, there's no way that they're gonna defeat Hybern. They need everybody on their team. And Rhys keeps saying this goddamn thing that, like, he's willing to take the brunt of it, right? Like, he's the most powerful High Lord in Prythian history, so he can, like, do most, I guess. And he keeps saying, like, I'm willing to do anything as long as you have a future, Feyre. And Feyre is just like, that is such bullshit. Like, why would I want a future without you in it? Okay, like, you don't need to do this. What is this? Like, where is this coming from? Why are you like this? And then she starts thinking, is he the most powerful person we have on our team? It's not who you're thinking. Remember when Amren was like, don't put the books together because it will wake up things that are meant to be kept asleep? Do you remember that, like, ominous thing? She's like, you know, Hybern might have the numbers, like more soldiers, but what if we had the monsters? She says this to Rhys and he's like, come again? Like, he's not really on the same page. She's doing mental leaps, this girl. The bone carver, I clarified. He and Amren have been looking for a way back to their worlds. I could have sworn Rhysand's golden brown skin paled. I wonder if it's time to ask him what he'd give to go back home. At the prison, we're wasting no time. Rhys is busy. Cassian comes along for the ride. And Feyre, as they're walking into the prison, Feyre's like, hey, Cassian, like, do you think it's a good idea to free the bone carver? And Cassian is like, you didn't think to ask that question earlier? Like, we're already here, girl. But they're already there. So in we go. And this is where we get some juicy gossip. Okay, remember how the bone carver, yes, it is number 5 from the Umbrella Academy. And that's how you're gonna see him forever now. So you're welcome. The bone carver shows itself to people. Everybody sees a different thing when they look at him, right? Last time Feyre saw him, he was this little boy with brown hair. And she kind of looks at him a little bit longer and she's like, God damn it. She notices his eyes are oddly violet, like someone we know. And that mouth twisted into a smile. Ooh, it's my mother's mouth. And Feyre's just like, please tell me that's not my son. It is. Yes, the bone carver is a future version of her son that she may or may not have with Rhysand. So, ooh. The second they walk in, the bone carver is just like wanting to talk about Nesta. He's like, oh, we haven't had somebody like this in such a long time. I'm so excited. How is she? And Cassian and Feyre know that, like, if a monster is really excited about, like, how powerful and potentially evil her sister is, that's, like, maybe not a good sign. So they're just kind of standing there like, and then the bone carver's like, oh, okay, I was distracted. Hello. How can I help you? Welcome to my prison cell. She basically explains, I've got the Book of Breathings. We think there's a way to send you home. What do you say? You know, you scratch our back, we scratch yours. Would you help us in this battle if we could get you out of here and send you home? And the Bone Carver is like, you know, I actually really like it in here. I kind of like my cell. I've got it. It's like quiet. It's dark. You guys come to visit me. I mean, what more could I want? They realize very quickly that this is a losing battle. And so Cassian is like, come on, Feyre. We've got to go to Hewn City. Let's go. Hewn City is the Court of Nightmares. And Bone Carver over here perks up. And he's like, oh, you're going to Hewn City? I think we can have a deal. He wants this thing called the Ouroboros. If Feyre can bring it to him, he's like, yeah, I'll help you. Whatever, just get me this thingy, okay? It is essentially a mirror that the Bone Carver says is like a window to the world or something. He's super vague, but apparently Mor's father, Keir, has it at the Court of Nightmares. And if Feyre can bring that to the Bone Carver, we have a deal. So Feyre's like, noted, creepy future son clone thing. I will see you later. But before we go to the Court of Nightmares, we head home, and this is where we see Nesta curled up with a book as usual. But strangest of all, Elaine is in the study. Remember, this girl does not leave her room. And Feyre just kind of comes up and is like, hey, my sisters that I love, how are you? Their dynamic, it is just so awkward to read. Elaine is still in her kind of like loopy trance sort of thing. And she's just like, I hear everything. I hear the sea and it's just so noisy. And Feyre's like, yeah, girl, you've got big ears now. It takes a while, but like you can get used to it. And she's like, no, it's even in my dreams. I hear screaming and I hear this bird of fire. And Feyre's just kind of like, why don't you go to the garden? Like, that's all that they can ever think to do with Elaine. They're like, go pick some weeds. And this is when the doors to the study crash open. And who runs in? Lucien. He is like, oh my God, you're awake, you're out of your room. How are you doing? Is there anything that I can get you? And this is when Feyre does a little snoopy snoop into his mind, because remember how she was talking to Rhysand? She still just like doesn't know how to feel about Lucien. Like it could be that he is just using her, like being nice and on her side simply because of Elaine. Like the mating bond makes people go a little loopy. So in she goes. What's going on in Lucien's little brain? He's basically like, oh my God, she's so thin. I have to take care of her. His heart is racing. He feels like he's going to throw up. And then he's looking around the room and he's like, why is it so nice? Why are the inner circle people so funny? Why does the city seem so clean? And why are the children always laughing? His mind is like going a mile a minute because remember, his whole sense of everything has kind of been flipped on its head. And then he's like looking back at Elaine. He's just like, oh my God, she's the most beautiful person I've ever seen. Then he starts thinking about Jesminda and he's filled with all this guilt because Jesminda is the woman he loved that got killed, right? And then he's thinking like, oh my God, she was going to be married. I've ruined her life. She's so sad. What have I done? Poor Lucien. And this is when Feyre realizes that leaving these three in the House of the Wind pretty much by themselves is maybe not the best idea. So she invites them to come live with her and Rhysand in the townhouse so that she can keep an eye on them at all times. They move immediately. Nesta obviously refuses to be held by Cassian, so Rhysand has to fly her to the house, which is quite funny. And this is where we see Azriel and Elaine's friendship start. He's always been like really attentive and caring to her, and he has to be extra careful because she's so weak. Feyre's already at the house at this point when Azriel and Elaine land, and Elaine just kind of looks around like, eh. And Azriel's like, they have a garden here, like, would you like me to show you? And she's like, I'd love that. And then she touches his little siphon, his little blue thing, and she's just like, beautiful. Color bloomed on Azriel's golden brown cheeks as he inclined his head in thanks. In case you're wondering, because this does get explained in a couple pages, yes, the mating bond can be rejected. This is when Nesta and Rhysand arrive and they land and Nesta's like, I'm gonna be sick, and she runs to the bathroom. Feyre whips her head around and is like, Rhys, what did you do? And he's like, I didn't do anything. She was complaining about me flying too slow, so I flew faster. Oh, yeah. Now we head to the night court. Cassian is staying home with Elaine. They kind of drew straws. So they're kind of doing two things here. Number one, they're trying to get Kyr's army, but also they're showing that Feyre has graduated to a new class. She is now High Lady. She's not just like this lap dance lady that she was last time she came. So they're going out full force, all right? Dressed to the nines. Everybody's looking real good, okay? The first thing that happens when she gets into the night court is she feels all of the people trying to get into her mental shield, and she basically retaliates by holding all of their minds in her hand and is about to crush them. Again, they all have to act like they're wicked here. So she's just reminding them like, hey, I can squish you like little bugs. So back off. I'm the High Lady now, okay? Respect. They sit down with Kyr, and he immediately is just kind of like, no, you know, I'm hearing what Hybern is saying. I'm kind of liking it, you know? I liked it when the Fae were in charge. Then he starts saying weird shit about Amarantha, and Rhysand is like, no. I kept you guys alive with my power during the whole Amarantha thing, so you don't get to talk. And then he's just suddenly like, bring him in. Mor's face went white with dread, because who just walked in? Eris from the Autumn Court. Remember this man? Do I have to tell you again what he did? Okay? We were not prepped about this as the reader. We were not prepped about this as the inner circle. Rhysand, again, is the only one who knows what's going on. Feyre and Mor are sitting there in shock, and Mor's eyes flash with betrayal and hurt. Feyre, in her brain, is like, hey, Rhys, what's he doing here? What the fuck cards are you trying to play? And he's like, he's here to make sure that Kyr agrees with us. And she notices that the words are tight and clipped, as if he was still holding the full might of his rage in check. And Rhys is like, I didn't just phone in a friend. I didn't just call him for fun. Okay, this is a political thing, so like, let's just get this over with. We don't get the whole backstory, but I guess Kyr has always wanted to ally with the Autumn Court. Seems pretty on brand. Baron is sort of a piece of shit, as is he. And so Rhysand is like, here you go. Here is your chance. If you help us, he will become your ally. And Kyr is still just like, not enough. And this is when Kyr plays the card we weren't ready for. I always wondered where all you went, why you weren't here. Hybern answered the question at last. And thanks to that, I'll tack on, what's it called? Valeris? Yeah, that city of starlight. I want access to the city. Me and my court. And everyone in their heads is like, no. But instead of that, Rhys just says, okay, well, there would have to be conditions and stuff. You know, we'd have to like limit how many people. And Mor just turns to him and is like in absolute shock. You know, this is the one place that she had. She hates her family for so many good reasons, so much. And that would just taint the one place that she feels safe and she loves more than anything. And Kyr just looks over at Mor and kind of gives her a look. And that's when Feyre's like, fuck him. He doesn't even give a shit. Okay, Kyr doesn't care about Valeris. He doesn't want to go. Like, what does he want to do there? He just wants to get under Mor's skin, and he knew this was the last thing. And this is when Feyre is like, we gotta wrap this up right now. I'm not staying in this room any longer. So she has one more question for him. Excuse me, Kyr, where is your Ouroboros? And Kyr is like, who told you that I had it? And he kind of thinks about it for a second, and he kind of leans in and he's just like, you know what? You can have it if you can take it. And what could he possibly mean by if you can take it? Let me tell you. Apparently, in order to like move it or whatever, you have to look into it, which is what you do with mirrors, right? But it has some kind of magic in it that everyone who has ever looked into it has been driven insane and never recovered. So Kyr is sort of like, give it your best shot, girly, and see you later. And he leaves. Eris is still in the room. Everybody is still just waiting there. And this is when Rhysand tells us why this whole shitstorm just happened. We know that, as Lucien has said, Baron would absolutely kill Feyre once he finds out about her power, right? So Rhysand went straight to Eris, and Eris has promised not to tell Baron and stuff like that. We'll get into it in a second. Why couldn't he have told them ahead of time? Unclear. I don't know. I don't know. He has promised to keep Feyre's powers a secret, and Mor is sort of like, well, what's your price? Like, what are we doing for him? Because like, I certainly don't trust him. He certainly hasn't shown me any reason. Something flickered in Eris's eyes, and he said, I don't know who fed you those lies to begin with, he said with a vicious calm. And Mor said, you never really gave me any evidence to the contrary, certainly not when you left me in those woods there. And he says that there were forces at work that you have never considered, and I'm not going to waste my breath explaining them to you. Believe what you want about me. And Feyre is like, okay, all right, forces at play. What about how you were just like a couple months ago chasing me across the ice with your brothers trying to kill me and your little brother Lucien? Okay, what was that about? And he said, I was ordered to do that with my fucking brothers by my father, so I couldn't really skip out of that. And Feyre's not letting it go, so she's like, oh, okay, then what about the love of Lucien's life getting murdered, beheaded by your family? Eris says, you know nothing about what happened that day. Nothing. And Feyre's like, I'm all ears. Got big ones. I love learning new things. Tell me about it, Eris. And he says, how do you think he made it to the spring border? Because after his love was beheaded, that is immediately when Lucien ran to Tamlin, right? And Eris continues, I wasn't there when they did it. You can ask him. I refused. It was the first and only time I've denied my father anything, and he punished me. By the time I got free, they were going to kill Lucien. And to make sure that they didn't, I contacted Tamlin and helped him, scurry my little brother across the border. And so even if all that is true, okay, even if Eris may not be a 100% evil shitbag, he's been raised by the High Lords. He has a price. Why is he doing this? He needs our support to back him to become High Lord of the Autumn Court. He has his other brothers, right? And this doesn't go by like age, it goes by amount of power, I guess, whatever. So whenever Baron dies, maybe we could help make that happen. I don't know. When it comes down to it, if there's a fight for the Autumn Court throne, I want you behind me. Okay? Rhysand is helping Eris so that Eris can get Kyr so that Kyr can help Rhysand. We get it? Okay. What a mess this book has begun to be. Whew. We winnow back home and everyone is pissed. Mor is devastated. Valeris and Eris all in the same day. Too much for her. So she just turns and starts screaming at Rhysand. She's like, how could you have not told me? How would it feel if I brought Amarantha here and said that we had to work with her? And it's getting ugly. Like they're shouting some pretty nasty things at each other. Amren steps in and is the voice of reason. She's like, listen, this is war, okay? Working with them doesn't mean forgiving them. And she turns to Mor and she's like, I promise when the war is over, we will go out together and just kill whoever you want to kill. Okay? I love it. Girls' night, all right? But just like hold off until the end of the war. Okay? She turns to Rhys and says, you're a sneaky bastard, but that doesn't excuse you for not warning us. She's like, you made the right call politically, but like you played it badly, my friend. Okay? And things kind of simmer down. This is when Feyre turns to Cassian and he's like, hey, any luck with the mirror? And she's like, oh yeah, apparently if you look into it, you go crazy. So no, I absolutely did not get it. And Amren is like, you talking about the Ouroboros mirror? And Feyre and Cassian are like, yes. She's like, why do you want it? Feyre's like, the bone carver asked us to get it. Yeah, they didn't tell Amren that they were going to try and set the bone carver free. And Amren hears the rest of this plan and is just like, you are idiots. Like, you can't escape from the prison. And they're like, but Amren, you got out. And she's like, oh no. They ask her how she got out of the prison and she gets really weird. She's like, the walls have ears. Feels like she's being listened to at all times, as if there's something that would drag her back to the prison. So she doesn't say much, but she's basically like, I had to give up a huge part of myself simply to fit into this body so that I could walk out of the prison. And they were like, what were you? And she says, I was a messenger and a soldier assassin for a wrathful god who ruled a young world. Like, spoilers, that's the most we're gonna get out of her about what she is, okay? She's basically like, so no, I don't think you should continue this plan. You aren't getting Bone Carver out. don't bother. All of a sudden, we hear little tap, tap, tap footsteps. Elaine has come down and she's just like, I heard noises. And they were like, oh yeah, sorry girl, we were kind of arguing, but like go back to bed. And she's like, no, I heard like crying. And everybody thinks that she's dead, but she's not. She's just changed and we can't find her. I saw young hands withered with age in this weird black box, and she just keeps going. Azriel just kind of takes her by the arm and is like, all right, sweetie, let's go. The next day, if you're wondering, yes, before Feyre wakes up, Rhysand and Mor have a little conversation where they kind of talk it out and really apologize. And honestly, now Mor is just more upset about Valeris. She understands that he did contact Eris to help Feyre, and so she's like, I can swallow that, whatever. But Valeris, she's still really pissed about, and Rhysand does realize that like this was rushed, this wasn't handled well, he messed up. But they're kind of on their way to healing that broken relationship, right? And then Lucien, a little later in the day, suggests something that maybe should have been thought of a little bit before, which is Elaine's little like weird, I hear screaming thing is just getting worse. And he's kind of like, can we call a healer? Like, do you guys go to the doctor? Like, this isn't normal. I think she should get checked up. And Nesta is like, I don't want any fae healer or you anywhere near my sister. So like, no. And Feyre's kind of like, well, there could be another way. Feyre can't get into Elaine's head, right? She can get into anybody else's mind. But I don't think she can do Nesta either. But Elaine, it's like a brick wall. Something because of how the Cauldron made her, she can't go in. So she's like, I can't do it to see what's kind of going on up there in her noggin. But perhaps the mating bond? Nesta is like, woo, like ready to explode. But they can't deny it. That seems like it could be a good idea. So let's give this whole mating bond thing a try. Lucien, help out your girl. They sit down for tea and it is the most awkward, horrible thing in the world. Nesta and Amren are like in another room, but very close. Feyre is sitting in the study as well, and it's just Elaine and Lucien at the table staring at each other over tea. Elaine won't drink it, It's dead silent, and then all of a sudden Elaine like picks up the teacup and then she just goes like, bleh. And Nesta is in there in a flash, like, what did you do to her? And Lucien is like, I'm sorry. I don't know. He like finally was able to do a little tug on the bond, and Elaine didn't like that. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, yeah, that felt a little too weird, okay? And then all of a sudden she's like, there are twin ravens. One is white and one is black. So obviously didn't do much, okay? Nesta takes Elaine out into the garden to chill out, and Feyre is like, Lucien, buddy, what happened? He said there was a bond and I was walking down it, or whatever you do, okay? And he gets to the end of it, so like Elaine's side, and that's when she like yelped, and he's like, I am completely at a loss. Like, he's never been mated before, so he doesn't know how it works, and he's just like, I don't know. And then he just kind of glances at the desk because he's nosy, okay? If we know anything about Lucien, he loves being involved. So he looks at the desk and he sees that it is RSVPs from the High Lords, right? He sees that there's a letter from Tamlin. The Dawn and Winter Court have replied. Summer Court is a maybe. So they've got pretty much everybody involved. And Lucien's kind of like, oh wow, good job, Feyre, for getting everybody to agree. But like, let me guess, now you guys have the problem of like picking where to have this little get together, right? Because everybody wants to be safe, and so they don't want to like leave their courts unattended or whatever. So they're all like, we're gonna have it at my court, but I don't want you here, but I don't want the typical High Lord drama. And Lucien is like, do you have a map? Could I help? Because he just really wants to be helpful, guys. So off he goes. He's going to pick a place for the party. This is where we get a training scene with Azriel and Feyre. Remember, she's still learning how to fly. So far, she like hasn't even taken off yet. Really, she just kind of like slams into trees, and she is giving up hope. But Azriel has a story for us. I really should have put them on the wall now that I'm thinking about it. But anyway, Miriam and Draken, Jurian's whole like former love, now nemesis kind of thing that they helped hide. Okay, while they were running into hiding, fleeing this other Fae queen that was hunting them, they had to cross this ocean. Something funky happened with the boats, and it was very clear that like that was not an option. So Draken and his seraphim used their powers to do like a Moses kind of thing and parted the sea so that they could just physically run. Miriam, of course, is like, I want to be the last one. I have to make sure all of the humans that we're saving are safe. So she's the last one crossing. There ends up being this kind of scuffle and she gets stabbed. Nobody really notices this because it has been such chaos and they assumed that Miriam got through and they're losing all of their power. So they don't have enough power to hold the ocean back anymore and they let it fall. As it's falling, they realize that Miriam's in it, but it's too late to catch it. So everyone just has to watch as Miriam is about to be drowned by an entire ocean. Why is Azriel telling this story? Because there's another person there. There is a cartographer named Nefel who is near Miriam. She kind of stuck by her side. She isn't really supposed to be in the army because she has a kind of malformed wing, so she actually can't really fly that well. So why would they have her in an army of flying soldiers, right? But she is the only one who is within reach of Miriam, and by some miracle, she is able to gather the strength to pick Miriam up and fly her to safety. Another important thing is that to get to where they were going, they have to like fly through this little hole in a cavern or something. Had Nefel's wingspan been an inch wider, she wouldn't have made it and they would have died. Azriel's basically like, you might think that because you aren't perfect at this or you aren't good at it, that it's not worth it, but like the most unlikely person can alter the course of history. So we train Feyre until the last possible day because we never know if just 1 hour will make the difference. Okay, it's the next day. We're having breakfast at House of the Wind. Everybody is there. Cassian like reaches over Nesta to grab a muffin, a blueberry lemon muffin. If you're curious, excellent choice. When suddenly Elaine just looks at Cassian and she's like, she snapped your wings and broke your bones. And Cassian's like, okay, well, you know, take more than that to kill me. Don't you worry, Elaine. And Elaine is just like, no, it wouldn't. So good morning to you, I guess. Azriel once again just gets up and kind of like leads her to the garden. He's like, I'm going to help you with your herbs. That's weird. After breakfast, Nesta and Feyre head to the library to do more research on the cauldron. Turns out, you know how Feyre is able to kind of like sense things that have to do with the High Lords because she has a drop of their power. Nesta seems to have relatively the same thing when it comes to the cauldron, so they're hoping that she'll be able to help with the research. Maybe a book will call out to her, whatever. So they're in the library when all of a sudden Nesta is just like, by the way, Feyre, like, sorry you never learned how to read. She just kind of assumed that Feyre knew. I don't know. But she's like, yeah, man, I didn't know. Why didn't you ask us? And Feyre's like, I didn't think you would help. If you don't remember, you guys kind of treated me like shit. And she's like, by the way, about that, like, why is it that you push everyone in your life away except for Elaine? And Nesta's about to answer when they look down the hall and the lights start flickering off like Japanese horror movie style. And they're just like, okay, run. They start running. Feyre is still incredibly sore from all of her flying training, okay? And apparently Nesta never exercises, so she can't run fast either. And eventually, two figures pop out in front of them from the stacks. Feyre is about to winnow them away. She can't contact Rhys because of all of those wards that are in the library to protect the priestesses. She can't signal down the bond for him, so she's about to winnow when these two figures, one has white hair, one has black hair, blows this weird like dust into their faces and their powers don't work. Yay! These guys apparently snuck in, pretended they were scholars, and the priestesses let them in. Turns out they are actually King Hybern's quote-unquote ravens. They're basically his spies. And Nesta's like, you're not taking Feyre. And they're like, yeah, we don't want her. We want you, Nesta. They want her because, remember, she took something from the cauldron, and the cauldron is broken, so they would like her back to fix it. Feyre just kind of gives Nesta this look that's basically like, run. And they start running, but they don't go up. They run down. They are running straight towards the thing that apparently scared Cassian so shitless that he still can't talk about it 200 years later. And these ravens are chasing them, right? As they are chasing them, the ravens are like shouting things at them. And so we learn some stuff. They are basically like, do you know what happened to the queens? So remember the mortal queens, the first one, the youngest one, they killed because she gave them their half of the book, right? After they had dipped Elaine and Nesta into the cauldron, the queens were supposed to go in. So they dipped the first queen in, and apparently the cauldron was really fucking pissy because of what Nesta did. So it had a little mind of its own. It gave the queen immortality as promised, okay? But it stripped away the thing that she loved most, which was her youth and beauty. And so she became this like withered old woman. And Feyre's hearing all of this and she's like, didn't Elaine say that she saw like withered old lady hands? And didn't she say something about ravens and that there would be a black and a white one? And Feyre's suddenly like, oh no, like cuckoo sister isn't so cuckoo. We made a mistake. And the ravens keep talking. Basically, the other queens, understandably, wouldn't get into the cauldron after the first queen went. And this like old withered queen has a real bone to pick with the sisters. It's very confusing how this works. Basically, she tells Nesta to keep running and Nesta is able to run back up. But anyway, whatever the case is, Feyre seals off her own chance of escape in order to help Nesta get out. And she keeps running down until she gets to the bottom. This is when she hears a little soft voice go,
Are you the High Lady?
and she's like, yeah, I am. And it's like,
Oh, I've heard of you. You know, like the stones and the walls and the wind. We all have eyes and ears, so like I've definitely heard rumors. But wow, it's so nice to meet you. Oh my god.
and Feyre's just like quaking in her boots.
And I heard you even talk to the bone carver. Like he's an old friend of mine. Wow, tell him I say hi. That's really great.
And Feyre's like, oh, cool. So we have a mutual friend. Do you want to help me? And the voice is like,
Oh, well, what are you offering?
and Feyre's like, honestly, what do you want? She thinks she's gonna die. So she's like, let me know. What could I possibly get for this like library beast, right? And the library beast says,
Well, I'd like some company.
and Feyre's like, you mean like to eat somebody?
No. Just someone to talk to. You know, I get lonely, so I'd really like some company every once in a while. Nobody comes down here.
And Feyre's like, okay, bargain. All right, deal. Help me out. And then whatever the hell she's talking to is like,
So you want me to kill them?
and Feyre's like, yes, please. And he says,
Okay, close your eyes.
she obeyed, trembling. And then all I heard was screaming. Then she feels some hands on her, lifting her up. It's Cassian. He was brave enough to come back down to save his High Lady. Isn't that nice? And he's just like, don't look, don't look, don't look, don't look, don't look, as they're flying up. Rhys also arrived, and he just kind of looks and then goes down there. And I'm pretty sure that he assists the library monster because the screaming starts again. So this is when Elaine gets justice. Everybody has been thinking that she's walked around just spouting batshit, when Azriel is finally like, she's a seer. Because if Nesta took something from the cauldron, what if the cauldron gave something to Elaine? And to prove us right, she just starts going off, okay? What does she tell us? She suddenly is like, the cursed queen might come. And they're like, what cursed queen? And she's like, not the cauldron cursed queen, but the other cursed queen. I know it's confusing, but like, just let me explain, okay? Remember how the younger queen that got killed had also warned them that there was a sixth queen and that she wasn't sick, but she didn't come to the meeting? And this is the person that when Elaine keeps talking about this like bird with flame feathers, she's talking about this queen. And they're kind of like, okay, Elaine, what? She says they sold the queen to some dark sorcerer lord, and he has a black box, and it's very important, and she's a firebird by day and a woman by night, and she just screams all the time. And this doesn't make sense to the inner circle. Doesn't make sense to me. Don't worry. This is all gibberish to the reader. But all we know is that the queen's name is Vasa, and we gotta find her. Mor is immediately like, oh, I'll go. And everyone is like, no, you are essential to everything in this court, so you can't go. Feyre kind of looks around and is like, everybody else has a job. So she's about to step up and volunteer when Lucien just says, I'll do it. His eyes were on Elaine as he said it. And Rhys is sort of like, and why do you think that you get to go on this very important mission? And Lucien is like, this eyeball I got, man, it sees through spells and glamours. So if we're looking for a cursed queen, I have the upper hand in trying to find her. I don't really belong to any court right now. I'm not doing anything. I would really like to be helpful. Please send me on this mission, okay? And Moore says, it will be very dangerous. And Lucien smiles and said, good. It'd be boring otherwise. The next day when Lucien is about to leave, we get a scene that is literally just there for drama. Even after reading this book, let me know your thoughts below. Why does this scene even happen other than to like tug on my Lucien fan heartstrings, okay? Basically, Feyre meets up with Lucien as he's about to leave. Rhys is like setting him up with some armor and stuff because he only brought the clothes on his back. Remember when he left the spring court? So Rhys is giving him like Illyrian armor and stuff like that. And Feyre's like, thank you for helping. And Lucien is basically like, it's about damn time I did something, alluding to the fact that he did jack shit to help Feyre while she was being abused by Tamlin. They have a moment and he is about to leave when they hear a tap, tap, tap on the stairs. Elaine has come down. Lucien turns and gives her a little bow. It's very heartbreaking because, again, she doesn't even say anything. She's not like, good luck, be safe. She's just standing there like, okay. And when Lucien turns to leave, he doesn't notice that she takes a step towards him, as if she's going to stop him or say something. And then he winnows away. When Feyre turns back to look at Elaine, she's already gone. And just when you think that that chapter wasn't dramatic enough, Amren runs in and she's like panting and everyone's like, what's going on? She's like, the summer court was just attacked by Hybern and they are laying siege to Adriata as we speak. Cool. Cool. As we know, the inner circle doesn't wait for anything. So the next few pages are all Rhysand talking war strategy, to be honest, getting the inner circle ready because they are heading to Tarkeen. No, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Guys, how many hours of content with me have you watched? They're gonna go help him, even though he kind of wants their heads on a platter. We still love him, okay? And they're especially in trouble because remember what I said last time? The summer court is like Prithian Switzerland. They're neutral. They don't get attacked. So they are not prepared. They are in the deepest shit. They still haven't had time to rally the Court of Nightmares troops, so the only people they have right now are the Illyrians. The Bat Boys go first, and Feyre and Moore are going to follow up later. This is Feyre's first battle. I mean, she's fought before. She's done like one-on-one sparring, even with Hybern or even with Amarantha. Like, it wasn't a ton of people all fighting around her, right? It was kind of just her versus somebody else. So when they land, the fighting has already started and she just feels overwhelmed by the chaos. It's just like screaming, blinding light, so much sound, and they haven't even landed in it yet, right? But Feyre and Moore aren't going to be on the front lines. This is where we really get to see how good of a warrior Moore is. Like, we don't really get a lot of Moore's actual backstory, but she is like a crazy good fighter and like war strategist and stuff. So she is in charge of helping Feyre, and they are going to go into the palace and try and help the actual High Lord family and everything like that, because the palace has already been taken over by the Hybern soldiers. Moore is basically like, listen, Feyre, I know this is your first time. If you don't want to kill anybody, just get behind me and like be my shield. But Feyre's like, no, I got this. I'm gonna do it. The first and second kill were difficult, but then she just kind of went into like this blood craze. I don't know. Anyway, apparently they're really, really, really fucking good at this. They run into the palace and they are just like killing Hybern soldiers left and right. The summer court has soldiers, but they were just overpowered, I guess. And somehow these two ladies do the whole job for them, I guess. And once they realize that they've got a handle on the situation, Feyre tries to use her bond to check on Rhys because she hasn't heard from him during the battle, right? So she's like, hey buddy, how you doing? When accidentally she like gets into his brain and she is doing that thing again where she's seeing from his eyes. He is fighting on a ship because Hybern came in from the west. The summer court is on the west coast and there seems to be like something funky going on with Rhys's magic. He should be able to like zap everybody with no problem and he seems to be like unable to fully tap into his magic. So that's weird. When who comes out of the ship and onto the deck? The King of Hybern himself. Feyre realizes that Rhysand probably knew what was going to happen. He knew Hybern was there. He doesn't have backup because this is his MO, okay? He likes to self-sacrifice and put himself in dangerous situations. Feyre taps in to the bond and is like, hey Rhys, why don't you kill him now? And he's like, if I kill him, his followers would just turn against us. And Feyre's like, okay, well then just like wait for one of us to come and help you, okay? Don't pull any shit, just keep them talking. So they taunt each other back and forth. Nothing really interesting happens, but then Rhys finally is like, fuck it, and he tries to kill the King of Hybern. His power shoots right through him. Why? Because that was a projection. It wasn't really Hybern. The king laughs and is like, did you really think that I would show up to a battle myself? And then he disappeared. And once the magic stopper is gone, he just goes like, and turns all of the soldiers to a red mist. After that, Feyre kind of snaps back into her body and she has a little breakdown. Mor kind of holds her and is like, it's okay, you know, after everybody's first battle, they do this. Once they kind of calm down, they head back into the palace proper where they find Tarquin and he's sitting there alone in the dining room, basically like, I really thought you guys were here to kill me, until he realized that they were coming to help. And so he doesn't really say thank you, but it's like a little bit implied. But he's like, Feyre, hi. Remember, Feyre has a blood ruby. He has a warrant out for her death, right? He's like, Feyre, think of my position, okay? This is what we hear. You leave Rhysand because you were brainwashed. You go back to the spring court. You're there for like a month and the spring court turns into an absolute shit show and then you disappear. So we moved all of our forces to the spring court border thinking that you were gonna come for us next. That's the reason why they extra weren't prepared for this Hybern attack, is because they were scared of whatever Feyre was gonna pull. And so Tarquin is basically like, this is your fault. You made me move all my troops. You stole from me. This is when Rhysand strolls in and he is like, we had our reasons. We're not responsible for him attacking you. And Feyre is finally like, just listen, Tarquin, we really need you to come to the High Lords meeting. Because remember, the summer court was kind of like, we might. So just please say yes. And honestly, like with that attitude, why don't you just go tend to your wounded? We'll leave. Send us an answer later. And Tarquin is like, excuse you. You can't talk to a High Lord like that. When Rhysand smiles and kind of goes, Tarquin's a smart cookie. So he suddenly gets it and he just kind of scoffs and he's like, you always did love to spit on tradition, Rhysand. And they leave. They head back to the Illyrian war camp. This is where we really see Cassian kind of in his element, which is he is the general. So he is going around checking on all of the soldiers, really being just like this pillar of strength, you know. Feyre tries to help the wounded as much as she can as well, until finally she collapses in her tent and goes to sleep. She is awoken when Rhysand climbs into the tent as well, and Rhysand is really upset at how well Hybern is playing this. He's darn good at this war thing. So many people died today because we just weren't ready, right? So they have this moment of holding each other and commiserating, and this is when Feyre says, I think we need to change our tactic. Feyre is basically like, listen, people know about Valeris, right? The shield is back up, but people know that you have this hidden city, you have all these secrets, right? I think we need to stop acting like pieces of shit around people and actually become allies, right? Drop the act. Tarkeen really wanted to be your friend even when you were acting like an ass. Why don't we try to actually show people who we are? And Rhysand kind of can't argue with that. And he's like, okay, so the secret that we're going to keep is that we're still going to hide the fact that Feyre has all of their powers. Feyre's allowed to show them that she has some of Rhysand's powers. But other than that, zippin' the lip. And then, for the love of God, we get a steamy scene. This is another very questionable scene in this book. They are surrounded by death. They are mourning. They are in a war camp. His growls of pleasure filled the tent, drowning out the distant cries of the injured and the dying. Life and death, hovering so close, whispering in our ears. When we finally get back to Valeris, we learn two things that have been hinted at, but now we're maybe getting a little more confirmation. First thing is Varian, remember Tarkeen's general, Tarkeen's Cassian. He and Amren have a little thing, okay? Friends with benefits, perhaps. Second thing is the second they get back, Nesta's first question is, where's Cassian? He's still at the camps working, but maybe his little feelings aren't so unrequited. And somehow this whole scene makes Feyre go, I gotta go to the prison. And her and Rhys just go. No questions asked. This scene is very short, but they go to the bone carver and she's basically like, name anything else. She's given up on getting the Ouroboros mirror. She's like, it's not gonna happen. So anything else that you want. And the bone carver is like, I already told you, I don't really have anything else. Jokingly, he's like, what about your firstborn? And he points to himself. And Rhys is like, oh, so not just any boy, right? Because remember, she told him that that's what she saw as like a young boy. And now Rhysand is like, oh, so like our boy. Okay. Feyre obviously is like, okay, no Rumpelstiltskin. Let's talk later. But she kind of leaves quite defeated. As they're leaving, Rhysand is like, can I see him? And Feyre lets him into her mind. And so he can see the face of their potential future son that is now currently a immortal, deeply evil being. So, Now we have the meeting with the High Lords. We are going to the Dawn Court because apparently that is the most neutral place. And we get 10 pages, I kid you not, of Feyre picking out what she's gonna wear. Apparently the crown that she picks out is very important. It's not, actually, but they look like the High Lord and Lady of the Night Court. Okay, they've got a couple outfits, very complimentary. They look like Shadow and Night. They're turning a look is basically what we learn. And then Nesta gets her like not another teen movie moment.
May I present to you the new and improved Janie Briggs.
Kiss me.
Congratulations, you just got your first slow motion entrance.
And then Nesta walks up to Feyre and says something that, quote, nearly made my heart stop dead with shock. She says, Feyre, you look beautiful. Sisterly love, it's beginning, it's trickling in. And Feyre is like, why are you dressed so nice? Cassian's attention is like still totally on them. And Nesta says, I'm coming with you. Replay, all right? Do you remember when Feyre asked Nesta to come and she was like, no, absolutely not? Something about seeing Feyre go to battle, seeing pretty much everybody, but especially Feyre go into battle to protect these people. She felt a little bad sitting on her ass reading romance novels, so off she goes. Also, I feel like I haven't mentioned this, but like, she hasn't just been reading romance novels, okay? Her and Amren have actually been training together. We never see the training happen, but they've been trying to figure out Nesta's power this whole time, okay? Cool. So anyway, Nesta has joined the team. That's great because she is a good bargaining chip simply because, like I said, she has a lot of power, but also she can give her testimony, which might emotionally sway the High Lords. Nesta said, "I do not want to be remembered as a coward." Rhys pops in and he's like, I used to have an emissary for the human realms, but she got promoted to High Lady, so I kind of need somebody. Would you be interested in that kind of position? And she's like, let me think about it, but I expect to be paid very well. Rhys laughs and basically says, I would expect nothing less from a sister of Feyre, and he pokes Feyre in the ribs. And then he laughs and says, well, welcome to the court. You're about to have one hell of a first day. Right before we winnow to the Dawn Court, though, Cassian is actually going to help Nesta winnow. Isn't that nice of him? Normally she flies with other people, and Nesta just suddenly is kind of like, you didn't come, and she just stops herself. The entire world seemed to go still at that interrupted sentence. And Cassian is just standing there. His eyes didn't leave Nesta's, nor did hers leave his. There was no warmth, no tenderness on either of their faces. Only that raging intensity, that blend of contempt and understanding and fire. And right as Feyre is winnowing, she hears Cassian tell Nesta, his voice low and rough, next time, emissary, I'll come say hello. Now we finally make it to the Dawn Court, which is just beautiful. It is apparently kind of always in this dawn sort of light. There were gilded domes and gilded mist, and the word gilded is used so much. This is when we get many, many, many pages of Feyre looking around the Dawn Court Palace and getting interior design inspo. She really wants an indoor pond. Anyway, let me look up how to pronounce his name.
The sun.
It's not the sun. Okay, I looked it up and it says that you pronounce it the sun. I'm not going to. His name is Thesan, okay? So they walk into the meeting room and there are already 3 High Lords there. We're calling him Thesan, okay? I like that better. Thesan is High Lord of the Dawn Court. His brown skin and hair were kissed with gold as if the sunrise had permanently gilded them. Gilded, okay? This is the High Lord with the gift of healing, the one that his drop of power gave Feyre the power to heal Rhysand from the poison wounds. You remember this? Okay. Standing next to him is a man with white hair and skin that looked frozen. You betcha. This is Callias, and he is the High Lord of the Winter Court. Yeah. And with him, he brought some women. One of them in particular is just staring at Mor and they literally squeal, hurtle across the room, and they're just hugging. Oh my god, I've missed you. They're thick as thieves. Rhysand finally, after a couple minutes of this, is like, you know that this is meant to be a serious meeting, right, guys? And everyone's like, ha ha. Callias said, yeah, I asked Vivian to stay home, but she said she would freeze my balls off if she wasn't allowed to come and see more. So, ha. This is supposed to be a funny, jolly moment, but Callias keeps kind of side-eyeing Rhysand, so I think that there's some kind of drama that hasn't been resolved, okay? So far, good vibes, but tense, all right? This is when another High Lord enters the room, and he is the sun personified, powerful, lazy with a grace nearly as beautiful as Rhysand. This is Helion. He is the Day Court High Lord. He has a big brain. His power isn't really explained, but he seems to just know stuff. And the first thing he says, he just looks at Feyre and is like, does Tamlin know what she is? And Rhysand is like, smart and beautiful. And Helion is like, no, that she's your mate and High Lady. And everyone is like, oh my god. And Rhysand just kind of smiles and he's like, well, he'll find out if he shows up. And Helion laughs and he's just like, I've always liked you, Rhysand. Honestly, I think this might come into play later, or maybe she just wanted to make the book even longer. I don't know. But honestly, Callias and Vivian have a really cute love story. I would love to have a little novella of them. Basically, Callias knew that he was going to be High Lord someday. And in his childhood, he fell in love with Vivian, love at first sight, knew it was meant to be. So he sent her off to be a kind of guard or soldier sort of thing out on one of the borders, very far away from him. So he grew up and no one knew that he had these deep feelings for this woman. Kind of like with Tamlin under the mountain, he didn't want anybody to know what he felt about Feyre because that would be a way to attack him, right? Or just a way to hurt Feyre. Lucky for him, he played the long game because when Amarantha showed up, she didn't even know Vivienne existed, so she was safe, right? So sort of like when Rhysand used the last bit of his power to shield Valeris and warn his inner circle, Callias did the same thing, except he contacted Vivienne and was like, this is what's happening. You're in charge now. Please take care of my people. Hopefully I'll see you whenever we sort this all out. But like, I love you. Bye. And 50 years passed. And the day he returned, they got married. And it was great. And so he doesn't have a heart of ice, is what I'm trying to tell you guys, okay? This is when the summer court arrives, along with the autumn court. Baron and his sons, Eris is here. And they sit down. They're basically like, all right, I think everybody who's gonna come is here. Let's start this meeting. The entrance was almost the same as the night in my family's old cottage when the door shattered and the beast charged in with the freezing cold, roaring at us with a crack of lightning, vicious as a spring storm. Tamlin appeared and smiled like a wolf. Tammy's here! Yes, he came fashionably late, and the waves of rage were coming off of him. Everybody's holding their breath. He looks ready to pop. No one, not even Amarantha, had looked at me with such hatred. He opened his mouth and I braced myself. It would seem congratulations are in order. So this might seem like a good start. He's congratulating her on a wedding and a tattoo. That's great. But no, he immediately starts telling everybody about his side of the story. He goes after Rhysand. He's basically like, you stole my bride in the middle of the night. And Feyre's like, the sun was shining when I left you. Tamlin continues to share this narrative of taking everything that Feyre did and twisting it just a little bit to make it evil. He is trying to make it seem like Feyre is this power-hungry, evil lady. Tamlin said that there weren't any high ladies, and so she ran off and found the man that would make her a high lady, right? Like, she just wants to be queen. Blah, blah, blah. He's also like, you saw all the stuff that Rhysand did under the mountain. How could you still want to work with him? Blah, blah, blah. Basically, he's like, I want to help you guys fight Hybern, but I also don't want you guys to buddy with Rhysand, because Rhysand and Feyre are little pieces of shit. And I think we should acknowledge that. Feyre kind of checks up on Rhys and she realizes she's like gripping his hand. And this is the first time she's ever felt his hands like sweaty. He doesn't know how this is gonna go. He needs the High Lords on his side and he's sort of like nervous. He's unsure. Tamlin is still going. This scene is so long. Tamlin is still like ripping into Rhysand and Feyre when finally he just can't speak anymore. Rhysand is done being patient. He basically used his magic to take away Tamlin's voice. And he's like, okay, listen, if I'm the crazy, conniving, malicious person you think I am, wouldn't it just be easier for me to control all of your minds right now? Like, you guys know how powerful I am. I could do it. So like, I'm just trying to have this meeting. You're the one that's coming in here starting all the drama, right? And Tarquin kind of chimes in and he's like, honestly, the Night Court were the only people who came and helped when I was under attack. And he kind of turns to Rhysand and he's like, by the way, like, why did you do that? Like, you didn't ask for anything. And Rhysand is like, isn't that what friends are for? And Tarquin is so goddamn hungry for friends, this poor man, that he is like, by the way, those blood diamonds, forget about them. We're even now. Happy days, okay? Cassian kind of mumbles like, I don't think Amren's gonna give that back. She got quite attached to that little rock. And Feyre could have sworn Varian's lips twitched to a smile. Rhys gives Tamlin his voice back, and he's basically just like, listen, I don't want to fight with you right now. We're here for Prythian. Let's talk about that. This is when Baron, and I think Eris as well, says some shit to Mor. Asriel, who has been quiet and reserved as usual, explodes and like almost attacks this High Lord. Like, it's really, really ugly. Luckily, they're able to hold him back, but like Mor is very shaken by this. It's just like the whole meeting is falling apart, okay? We randomly switch the topic to Faebane, which is that thing that Hybern keeps using. It's like the powder that those guys in the library like onto Feyre and Nesta so that they couldn't use their powers, or even that his niece and nephew used to poison Feyre. That poison, they start talking about it and how Hybern has a lot of it and will probably use it in the war. Luckily, Lucien has been doing some damn work. Rhysand says that he has like his top inventor engineer lady named Nuon, who was actually the one who made Lucien's eye. He always talks about like, my friend at the Dawn Court. It's Nuon, this genius person. And Lucien actually got his hands on a little bit of the Faebane and he sent it to Nuon, and she's been working on an antidote. And so actually the Dawn Court is now 100% confident that it has an antidote for Faebane, but it's essentially like a vaccine. And we've got some anti-vaxxers in the community, would you believe? This just sparks many more pages of arguing. I cannot stress to you how long this scene is, okay? Baron doesn't want it. He doesn't trust anybody, blah, blah, blah. Starts screaming, starts talking to Rhys about how he's Amarantha's whore still, blah, 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 blah. Feyre loses her mind and just lets loose all of the powers. She just kind of lost control, and she like shoots a little bit of fire out, shoots a little bit of ice and water and all this stuff. There goes keeping her powers a secret, okay? The meeting, if it could dissolve further into chaos, it does. Baron stands up and is like, I've had enough of this, and starts storming out when Nesta is like, sit your ass down. And she starts telling her story. Whatever she says, it's powerful, because at least Baron is like, I will consider these words before he leaves. The other High Lords are standing there quite unhappy that their powers are gone, and Feyre has something to say. I didn't take your powers, you gave them to me, and I will use my powers to squash Hybern. And if you think that my possession of a kernel of your magic is your biggest problem, then your priorities are severely out of order. Vivian is the first one to stand up, and she's like, I'm with you. Cressida is there. Cressida's like, you know what, me too. All right, girl power. That forces Tarquin and Callias's hands. Eventually, that means Helion and Thessian and even Tamlin stand up and agree. 6 out of 7, Rhys chuckled down the bond. Not bad, Cursebreaker. Not bad at all. They stay and work on this alliance thing a little further in terms of like who's gonna donate how many troops, etc. When we all head back to our rooms and Helion is there. This is when we find out that he also has a little bit of a act going on. He wears a little bit of a mask. Throughout the meeting, even though he was kind of joking and like, I've always liked you, Rhysand, there was this underlying like lethal power. Like, he just seemed on the verge of snapping, and it turns out that he's actually like a really jolly, charming guy, and we love him. So he was kind of like, damn, Rhysand, you didn't tell me that you were gonna act like a nice guy. I looked like a dick, man. You gotta communicate with me, okay? I wanted us to be on the same page. Also, fun fact, he has been trying to get Cassian, Mor, and Azriel to have a foursome with him for centuries. They haven't accepted his offer, and Feyre, considering his beauty, Feyre is just like, why the hell haven't they said yes? We also learn that Helion and the High Lady of the Autumn Court had a love affair because he saved her during the war. I don't know how she puts this together when nobody else did. They've had hundreds of years to think about this, and Feyre thinks of it in like the first second, but she realizes, she starts doing some math. Helion is Lucien's father. Oh my god. Feyre's like, he's got the same nose, he's got the same smile. Not in the fan art, but in the book he's described as having much darker skin than his brothers, and maybe that's why his brothers and his dad hate him extra. Baron would never admit that his wife had an affair, or maybe he like doesn't know, but suspects, whatever. Lucien has always been the Lady of the Autumn Court's favorite. Feyre's like, probably because he's the only son that came from a man that she actually loved. And bonus, first of all, Rhysand, they're doing this through the bond. Rhysand is just standing there like, oh my God. He didn't know either. And you know what? Who else doesn't know? Helion. Helion doesn't know. After the war, the Lady of the Autumn Court went back to the Autumn Court and had a baby 9 months later. And you want to know something else, God? Oh, juicy. I just want like to hear more about the other High Lords, to be honest. I'm sick of the inner circle at this point. Helion doesn't have an heir. Who's going to be High Lord of the Day Court after him? Suddenly, Nesta bursts into the room and she's like, we gotta go. And Feyre's like, are you okay? And she's like, no, something is very wrong. Can't you feel it? Rhys, to his credit, like immediately sends out the guys to go do a little check, but they just can't find anything. And they're sort of like, you know, this is your first time in a new environment. Calm down, Nesta. Like, you've had a hard day. Remember, he said you were gonna have one hell of a first day. Did we deliver? Am I right? Am I right? They all go to sleep. Fun fact, Mor spends the night sleeping with Helion. You get what I'm trying to say. Feyre asks Rhysand, you know, why does she do that to Azriel? Like, she knows how they both feel about each other, right? And Rhysand just kind of says more of the same thing. Like, I don't ask them questions. Okay, I've given up. The next day, they have another meeting to actually talk about the alliance some more. When Nesta literally falls out of her chair, she starts convulsing. She's almost having like a seizure. She's moaning. Everybody thinks that she's been poisoned. So of course, Fessin comes up with his healing power and is trying to heal her. And he's like, there's nothing wrong with her. And she's still just like shaking on the ground. And she kind of croaks out. She's like, it's not me. It's the cauldron. And then we felt it, a shuddering through the earth. And then the impact came. They were too late. Hybern destroyed the wall. So this is when we learn Hybern didn't want Nesta back because he needed the power that she stole from the cauldron. He realized that she was like a little notification device, okay? Everyone immediately goes back to their own courts, but they're basically just like, okay, all hands on deck. We all trust each other, right? Okay, we're in it to win it. Let's just communicate, do your things. Rhysand's first thought is the human realm, because Hybern just destroyed the wall, which is the only thing keeping the humans safe. So he's kind of like, what do we do? Like, I think that we should go get some humans and bring them to your dad's estate, right? They still have this empty house. And Feyre's like, you know, we didn't really have, it's just a house. Like, it's not a safe house, you know? It wouldn't be any match for Hybern's soldiers if they showed up there. Which is when Elaine steps up and she's like, we could use Grayson's house. Grayson, if you forget, former fiance. His dad was like a conspiracy theorist, has a bunker kind of guy. He's been waiting for this, the whole Fae invasion, right? So he has got super high walls. He's got tons of food, storage, stuff like that. She's like, let me go talk to him and he can open his house to refugees, right? Feyre is like, really don't think that's a good idea, Elaine. You're a Fae now. And Elaine is just like, let me do this. They figure that they can glamour her, and Feyre is like, okay, we're leaving in an hour max. This is when Cassian grabs Nesta and is like, told you, you should have trained with me, okay? He gives her a 30-second rundown of like, go for the throat, go for the groin, here's this. She has also never worn pants in her entire life. And Cassian says, oh, I bet you would start a riot if you did. Amren, oh man, baby, she is pissed. She was supposed to figure out how to stop this before it even happened, right? So she's just kind of like running through her books, fuming. When Feyre is like, hey, Amren, that thing that lives in the library, what's its name? And she's like, oh, you mean Bryaxis. Why? And Feyre's like, I think I need to ask it a few more questions. To the library we go. Amren and Feyre head down there and we talk to Bryaxis again. She's like, hey, a war just broke out in my country and I was just wondering if you would fight for us. Like, what would you like in return for fighting for the Night Court? Similar to the Bone Carver, Bryaxis is just kind of like,
I'm really happy here. I've got kind of everything that I need.
And Feyre's like, come on, there's got to be something. All right, will you help us? And he says,
Well, I'd like the sunlight and the moon and the stars.
and remember, Feyre's not really good with riddles, so she's trying to puzzle out how she can get this stuff. And Amren's like, so a window? You want a window? We can do that, okay? Okay. Bryaxis smiles and is like,
And will I be able to hunt and drink their fear and dread on the battlefield?
and Feyre is like, only on Hybern's side and only until the battle ends? Bryaxis is like,
Sounds good. Okay, deal.
now it is time for the battle to start. They begin heading towards the human realm. Feyre and Rhysand step outside the townhouse one last time, and he turns and says, I wonder if we'll see it again. I knew he wasn't talking just about the house. I rose up on my toes and kissed his cheek. We will, I promise. I held tightly to him as I added, we will see it all again. And when the night-kissed wind winnowed us away into war, away into untold danger, I prayed that my promise held true. Welcome to part 3, Hi Lady. First order of business, we're going to the human realm. They have glamoured Elaine to still look human. As promised, the Grayson Manor is a fortress, the bunker of a crazy man, right? They ask to speak to Grayson and his father. They are eventually let in, but they are let in and are kind of being held waiting for them in this very small room. And Feyre's sitting there kind of fidgeting. And Nesta kind of notices and is like, what's up, girl? And Feyre tells her, I don't really do well in enclosed places. And Nesta quietly says, I can't use a bathtub. She's like, I've been using buckets since I came out of the cauldron. Like, I can't sit in a bathtub. And Feyre realizes she never even really thought about that. Because Nesta's such a hard ass, Feyre sort of thought that the trauma caused by the cauldron was just her being even meaner, but she's been kind of suffering in silence too, as well as everyone has. Okay, moral of the story is everyone is suffering in silence and everyone should be in therapy, okay, even you. Feyre's kind of like, we'll fix that when we get home. Like, I'm sure we could figure out a way to get you to bathe more easily. And Nesta kind of looks at her and Feyre sees gratitude and maybe something else in her eyes, and Nesta's about to say something when 24 guards pop out to say hello. This is when we meet Grayson, ex-fiance of Elaine, and his father. They're pieces of shit. Not a big story there. Feyre gives them the rundown of what is happening. They need their help. Could you let humans stay with you? Blah, 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 blah. And Grayson's father is listening and he's like, okay, first of all, cut the crap. Elaine is not a human. I don't appreciate you lying to me and using your little fae magic on me. And they're really confused as to how he knows this. And he's like, oh yeah, that's not all I know. I know that Elaine was the first one turned, and then they turned Nesta, and Nesta's got these weird ass powers and blah, 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 blah. He just starts listing it as if he was there. Where did he get this information from? Plot twist of the century. Jurian comes out and he is on our side. Yes, he comes out of the shadows and has the audacity to be pissed at everybody for not seeing through his acting. He's like, especially Moore, because remember, all of these guys, the inner circle, they fought in the war on the side of the humans. So they were on Jurian's side in the war. They knew him before he kind of went nuts and became Amarantha's jewelry, right? So he's coming out here like, guys, you know me. Like, do you think I would have done such a 180 and gone from being like head of the human army to being Hybern's little tool? Absolutely not. Like, he looks at Rhysand. He's like, Rhys, why didn't you just look in my mind and see what I was thinking? And Rhys is like, why on earth would I look into the mind of somebody who was the eyeball of the woman who sexually assaulted me and did numerous other horrific things for 50 years? Why would you want me to look into your memories? And Jurian is sort of like, fair point. Okay. Feyre is like, and why are you so obsessed with finding Miriam? Like, don't you want to kill them? There was a stark honesty in Jurian's eyes as he shook his head. No, he said roughly. I want to beg their forgiveness. Feyre looks over at Moore and there are tears lining her eyes and she blinked them furiously away. Basically, Jurian has secretly been on our side. He has been helping move the pieces of the chessboard over on Hybern's side to slow down everything that he's doing, and he wants to help us while still remaining a spy within the Hybern camp, okay? We still don't fully trust him, but he has a piece of juicy information for us. And what is that? Oh boy. Right after the meeting between all the High Lords, Tamlin went straight back to Hybern's camp, and Hybern is going to attack the Summer Court tomorrow with the Cauldron, okay? Bad news. They finally turn back to Grayson and his father, and they get them to agree to help the humans. Of course, they were like, we're only going to help the rich humans with titles and land and blah, blah, blah. They eventually get them to agree, no, everyone deserves to live, okay? Grayson is also an extreme piece of shit to Elaine. Like, you're a fae now. Ew, I can't believe I even touched you. Give me back my ring, blah, blah, blah. Nesta straight up slaps him across the face. It's very nice. And Elaine is crushed. That was, she like had that little kernel of hope, you know, that she could go back to her human life. Honestly, blessing in disguise. Grayson sounds like a piece of shit. Jurian also is giving us quite a bit of good information in terms of how they're actually planning the battle. So he's like, you know, they're going to put the weak people on the left, so you're going to want to go there and blah, 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 blah. Once they kind of finish everything that they came here to do, Jurian approaches Feyre and is like, by the way, just want to thank you again for what you did regarding the children of the blessed. And she's like, yeah, I didn't do it for you. I did it for those stupid humans. And he says, I know. And that's why I chose to trust you. So Feyre's winning them over left and right. But now we have to go save the Summer Court again. And it looks bad because they've got the Cauldron this time fully loaded. So what are we going to do? They rally the troops. Apparently, they warn the Summer Court, obviously, and then they let the Dawn and Day Court know to rally troops, but there isn't that much time, so it's going to be mainly the Illyrians doing everything. Elaine just collapses into a tent and is sobbing in her bed. Inconsolable? Unconsolable? Cannot be consoled. Feyre goes out and finds Rhysand kind of looking over the camp. They're like up on this big outlook, and he's just kind of like, a lot of soldiers are gonna die today. This is the morning of the attack. And then he's just like, you know, Feyre, I actually don't think I've told you how grateful I am that you're by my side. You know, I always say that I love you, but like, I'm genuinely grateful to have you. And then the army wakes up. Time for battle. The battle starts out pretty okay because they have the element of surprise. Hybern thinks that they have the element of surprise, but as their army starts charging, all of a sudden, poof, Rhys releases the glamour that he had. He was hiding the whole army, and so all of a sudden there's just like a mass of Illyrian soldiers in front of Hybern's army, and they're just like, ah, shit. Also, they took Jurian's advice and they had like the strong, you know, it was great. It was working out. Seems that today might be okay. And this is where we get to see Cassian in his prime. Apparently, he dances on the battlefield. He sees war as his symphony. Is that what they say? Feyre understood why other fae seemed to tremble at his name. He ends up killing one of the commanders of Hybern's army, and that's when they kind of surrender and hightail it back to safety. That's the end of the battle. Because it was an attack on the Summer Court, Tarquin gets to decide what to do with the other soldiers that they have captured. He picks a few out of the bunch, takes them away for questioning, and the rest of them just kind of stand there and they start convulsing. And Feyre's like, what the fuck? She looks closer. Water is bubbling out of their mouths. Tarquin drowned them on dry land. They all get back to the camp to relax. Nesta and Feyre help kind of clean up any of the injured, and they're all sitting around the campfire, chilling out. You know, it's been kind of a rough day when Cassian appears. He was doing, you know, general business, whatever. Nesta jumps up and she's like, you're injured. And everyone's like, no, he's not. He looks fine. And she's like, no, show me. And Cassian like pulls up his shirt or whatever, and he's got this big gash. And that's when Feyre's like, Nesta's been watching him closely because she noticed more than anybody else that he was just like being a little tender to his side, you know? And it took her like 2 seconds to recognize it. So everyone's kind of like, okay. Rhys gets mad at Cassian. He's like, you know better than to walk around injured, blah, blah, blah. Cassian teaches Nesta how to bind his wound. They are maybe about to have a moment. They're like always on the verge of a moment when inexplicably Mor just kind of interrupts. And this continues for the rest of the book. Like anytime they have any interaction, Moore looks really angry. Of course, we get some sexy Feyre and Rhysand time because they get very turned on by battle, apparently. And they're staying at the camp for about 5 days. There are little skirmishes in between, but nothing too big, until one day, Azriel comes back to camp and he's like, guys, they just walked right past us. And everyone's like, what? He's like, yeah, Hybern just moved all of his troops towards the winter and autumn court borders. Like, what do we do? So of course we get into some more war strategy talk when Varian comes up with an idea. Spin a glamour, a good one, so that if anyone walks by here, they see and hear and smell an army. It's gonna seem like they're still staying at the camp, but they are actually going to march to meet Hybern. Cassian really loves Varian's brain, because remember, they're both generals, and so when Varian tells him this plan, Cassian is like, ooh, I love how your mind works. If you ever get sick of all this sunshine in the summer court, you can come play in Valeris. It's a very cute bromance. I appreciate it. The soldiers end up catching up quite easily to Hybern's army, and they look really tired. So we're thinking, excellent. They have no idea that we know where they are. They think they're gonna rest. We're just gonna attack. So they like inch closer, and all of a sudden, Hybern's army just like springs up and they're like ready to go. They set this trap basically looking like they were tired from travel, and wazam, because they had the element of surprise and everyone is so tired from the previous battle, from moving, from creating the glamour, they're not very powerful at the moment, and it becomes a shit show immediately. They didn't even have time to really form lines and stuff like that. Cassian, of course, throws himself in the middle of all of this. Nesta is standing there just like unable to take her eyes off of Cassian. It's very intense. Feyre is just like looking for any answer to what can give them the upper hand, and who has all the answers? The Surreal. Yep. Feyre's gonna go hunting again. Moore is supposed to be babysitting Feyre. She has to protect her high lady at all costs, but Moore is also like itching to jump into the battle because they're clearly so overpowered. Every single person is needed, and Moore is an incredibly good warrior. So why is she sitting on the sidelines? She's kind of like, put me in, coach, put me in. And so Feyre is like, you go ahead, Moore, you know, go fight your battle. And Moore is like, are you sure you're gonna stay here? And Feyre's like, yeah, go girl, you know, do your thing, right? Nesta is not gonna go anywhere because she has to watch Cassian. So Feyre just kind of like slinks into the shadows. She ends up going to Elaine, who is still in the tent crying, and asking where the Surreal is, and somehow Elaine knows. Like, I think she's getting a better handle on her seeing power. I don't know. Anyway, we find out where the Surreal is. Feyre gets there really quickly, obviously catches the Surreal with no problem, and the Surreal is just like, girl, what do you want? We can't keep doing this. The Surreal says that he can't help her find out where Hybern's armies are, because the big issue with this battle is that the armies keep coming. Like, all of a sudden there's the cavalry coming over the hill, and then there's all this other stuff. So she's like, I just want to know where their camp really is. Okay, they clearly have a hiding spot. Surreal is like, no can do. The Cauldron is hiding them, but you have someone who can see through the Cauldron stuff. Feyre's like, no. Elaine, not in a good headspace, doesn't really understand her power. She's really into the like riddle spouting thing, and I don't do riddles, we know this, so I don't think it's gonna work. And the Surreal is like, no, the other one. And this is where we hear Sarah J. Maas's favorite term, like calls to like. Because the Cauldron made Nesta, and Nesta has like some part of its power, whatever, as we kind of already knew from her helping them do research in the library and her being the kind of alarm clock of the Cauldron, right? Nesta's got that connection that we need. But the Surreal says she can't find the Cauldron by herself. She is going to need some bones, and they're going to do something called scrying. Another question. Why didn't the Cauldron react when I touched it and said the spell? Remember when she was first in Hybern's basement or whatever? And the Surreal is like, you didn't hold on to it long enough. And she's like, it was killing me. My brain started to come out of my nose. Like, what was I supposed to do? And he's like, yeah, that's the point. My heart stuttered. I need to die for the Cauldron to be stopped? The Suriel is like, ugh, you are so dramatic. But yes, it would drain the life out of you if you touch it. But honestly, that's not your biggest problem because you would still have to touch the cauldron, and Hybern's not going to let you do that. And even if you could stop the cauldron, their forces are already kind of beating you guys up. So it wouldn't necessarily end the war, right? You've got to do something else. And this is when Feyre is like, so what are your opinions on using the bone carver? Even the Suriel is kind of like, ugh. I can't see people like him because he's not of this world, but you would really risk letting him out to save Prithian? And Feyre's like, well, yeah, but at this point it doesn't even matter because he wants me to get this thing and I can't get it. And the Suriel's like, oh, the Ouroboros. What, you can't get it? And Feyre's like, if I look into it, it would drive me to insanity and break me. So once again, everybody, no, I'm not going to go get that mirror. And the Suriel says, only you can decide what breaks you, Cursebreaker. Only you. And then the Suriel is suddenly like, and tell Amren that the answer lies on the second and penultimate pages of the book. Together they hold the key. Feyre's like, okay, the key to what? And he's like, the key to stop it. It took me a heartbeat to register what happened. The Suriel gets mowed down by an avalanche of ash arrows. He gets shot through the heart. And who steps out of the trees? Where are you? Ianthe. The Suriel is lying on the ground, dying. Ianthe just says a bunch of stupid stuff. Honestly, she's such a waste of a character. No offense. Ianthe is basically like, he wouldn't talk to me. Like, I tried to talk to him and he wouldn't give me any answers. So I put a tracking spell on him and he led me to you and blah, blah, blah. Whatever. Feyre is looking at this scene and she realizes that now that the Suriel is so damaged, Ianthe could very easily take him back to wherever the hell she stays now, force him to give her answers and stuff like that. So the Suriel is kind of like, let me die, you know, like, don't let her take me. And so Feyre comes up with a brilliant plan. She just jumps in front of everybody and is like, catch me if you can. And she runs off. She's basically running so that the Suriel has enough time to crawl off somewhere, because I guess he has like enough strength to do that. So she's running through the woods, running, when she sees a familiar door. She busts in and is like, hey girl, did you miss me? The Weaver is like, sup thief, welcome back. She's also like, oh, you saw my brother? She can like smell the bone carver on her. Yeah, did I mention that? The bone carver and the Weaver are siblings? Because they are, all right? The Weaver's sort of like, why are you back here, girly? People don't really come visit me. Feyre's like, well, I actually brought you some dinner. Enjoy. And that's when we hear Ianthe and the guards outside of the house being like, you selfish bitch, Feyre. You know that we're going to have to kill whoever else is in this house with you. And they charge in. Feyre does this like backflip maneuver over Ianthe through the door and slams it closed behind her. And she hears the screaming begin. Yeah, Ianthe is no more. Guys, she's really dead. Now we get a scene where, you guys should know this by now, but I'm a sucker for death scenes. There are just some scenes that make you cry. Here we go, all right? She runs back to the Suriel who hasn't moved. And she's basically like, I can heal you the same way that I healed Rhysand. She starts like getting all bloody and he's like, no, don't waste your magic on me. You know, I'm already gone. And she's like, well, what can I do? And the Suriel is just like, can you just stay till the end, you know? And the Suriel just kind of says, you were kind and you fought your fear. And Feyre's like, well, you were kind to me. You helped me when nobody else would. A small smile formed on its lipless mouth. Feyre, I told you to stay with the High Lord. And she's kind of like, yeah, I did. I stayed with Tamlin. We got through the under the mountain thing. Everything's okay. It's over now. Like, you can pass on. And the Suriel's like, why do I waste my breath on this girl? No, I'm not talking about that High Lord. I am steps ahead of you, babe. I know everything that goes on in this world. I'm talking about Rhysand. When I said stay with the High Lord, keep staying with him. I wasn't talking about Tamlin. And Feyre's like, oh. And then the Suriel is like, you should probably go now. Things are gonna get worse. And then he's like, and I have one little request. And Feyre leans in. With a rattling breath, he said, leave this world a better place than how you found it. Its chest rose and stopped altogether as its breath escaped in one last sigh. I understood why the Suriel had come to help me again and again. Not just for kindness, but because it was a dreamer. Feyre just kind of cries there in the woods for a really long time. And then she feels a hand on her shoulder, and it's Helion. And he's like, come on, Feyre, time to go. She's like, I can't just leave him in the woods. And Helion is like, I can get rid of the body. You know, he's got the power of the sun. So she's like, okay, but we're going to do it right. Give me your cloak. Because the Suriel, I never really mentioned this, but the Suriel has like a tattered cloak that he's kind of obsessed with. He keeps asking to like get better clothes, you know? So Feyre has like once given him a slightly better, but not really great cloak, you know? She gets the cloak of a High Lord, drapes it over the Suriel. She says, thank you one last time. And Helion just kind of evaporates him in a heartbeat. And Helion is like, okay, let's go back to camp. They went right into Rhys's tent and they just kind of look at each other. He had just fought in a very bad battle. She just lost a friend. And so they just collapse into each other's arms. This book, honestly, guys, isn't funny anymore. It's just a lot of death and battle from here on out. So after the little hug session, we get a rundown of what happened at the battle while Feyre was gone. Wasn't good. It turns out Cassian got really, really horribly injured. Like, he's unconscious right now. There's a healer with him. He just like wouldn't listen to orders and sacrificed himself, went into it, got stabbed. Not looking good. So we're sad about that. More, though, is absolutely livid at Feyre. I mean, she's screaming at her, so angry because Feyre didn't tell her that she was going to go find the Suriel. She made it seem to Mor that she was just going to stay in the camp where Mor had been kind of babysitting her. So Mor comes back after the battle and has no idea where Feyre is. And she's like, I had to tell Rhys that I didn't know where you were. Like, my only job. Can you imagine that? Rhysand is also like, yeah, next time, like, you know, you're allowed to do whatever you want, but like maybe next time leave a note. And Feyre notices panic in his eyes, and it's not the same fear that she has grown accustomed to. It was like actual terror at not knowing where she is. And she kind of realizes like, oh yeah, this is like wartime. Like, the first thing Rhysand probably thought is like she got kidnapped and is now like a prisoner of war or something like that, you know? So she's kind of like, ooh, okay, I did an all right? Then Cassian wakes up and my God, does he have his ass handed to him by Rhysand? Rhysand is like, what were you thinking? Like, you didn't follow my order? You could have gotten yourself killed. Apparently he got stabbed and Azriel literally had to hold his guts into his body. Like, his guts were falling out and Azriel held them in. Like, it wasn't just a little scratch, okay? Rhysand is like, you didn't follow my orders. I specifically told you not to go. And Cassian was like, your order, respectfully, was bullshit. The line was breaking. I had to do it. And Rhysand is like, you don't get to question my orders though, man. Like, I'm the High Lord. They just keep going back and forth. Cassian's like, why do you keep doing all this self-sacrificing bullshit? Like, why are you allowed to do crazy ass shit and not listen to anybody and not listen to our opinions, but I'm not allowed to? And Rhysand just kind of breaks down and he's just like, I can't see you guys get hurt. And Azriel and Feyre step out of the tent to give them a little privacy. And if you thought that the arguing was done there, Mor is not done. She's waiting outside the tent, ready to rip into Feyre. And here we go. She was livid to a point that Feyre had never seen before. She's just like, you lied to me. And Feyre's like, I didn't lie. I didn't tell you I was going to stay at the camp. You just kind of assumed that. And Mor is just like, I would have let you go. Like, why did you have to keep that a secret? I would have let you. I just want to know where you are. And Feyre is sort of like, you're overreacting. Like, I don't have time for this, okay? And Mor is like, no, you don't get it. Like, you lying to me or, you know, not trusting me with the truth, you're the High Lady. And if you're keeping secrets from your third in command, because remember, it's Rhysand, then Amren, then Mor. She's like, if you're keeping secrets from me, what kind of message does that send? We're the inner circle. We're supposed to trust each other, tell each other everything, listen to each other. Every time we've ever fought, it's always been about people keeping secrets from each other, okay? And Feyre's just kind of tired of being yelled at. She's kind of on edge because her friend, the Suriel, just died, all this stuff. And so she just sort of is like, oh, you want to talk about telling the truth? And why did you sleep with Helion? Why won't you tell Azriel the truth about your feelings? Mor tells her to shut the fuck up. And Feyre's like, oh, so you don't like people questioning you about your choices? And Mor is just like, oh, girl. And she leaves. The next scene is confusing, so I'm going to go over it quickly. But basically, Amren shows up. Feyre tells her what the Suriel told her and about how Nesta needs help learning how to scry with bones. Amren teaches her how to do it. Basically, Nesta just has to like go deep into her subconscious and like rattle the bones like dice and throw them on a map. Bada bing, bada boom. She does it. She goes way the hell too deep. It gets really scary. They're trying to call her out. Something is very wrong. Like she can't escape her mind. So Feyre dives in. That answers my question. You know how she can't get into Elaine's mind? Apparently she can find a way into Nesta's, and it is not a nice place in there. It is like dark and creepy and terrifying, and they have to like work together to kind of pull each other out of wherever the hell Nesta's mind has brought them. When they come out, they look at the map, and in the chaos, Nesta had let go of the bones, and they made a little circle. So perfect it had to have been magic around one particular point. Turns out the cauldron is like only 100 or so miles from their house, which is weird. So yay, they know where the cauldron is, but boo, in Nesta's mind, she saw how many forces Hybern had, and it is not looking good. So they're like, we've got to get everybody or else we are fucked. So it doesn't look good, okay? And just to break up the doom and gloom, who runs into the tent at this very moment? But Varian. Varian just busts in, doesn't look at anybody else in the tent, looks at Amren, just like hurtles across the tent. None of us dared to speak as he dropped to his knees before her, took her shocked face in his broad hands, and kissed her soundly. That night, everybody is falling asleep. Feyre has really scary dreams as usual. When she wakes up and she hears this noise and she just feels wrong. And so she gets up and she's looking around, and Nesta busts out of her tent as well. And she's like, do you hear it? And they're like, yeah, oh my God, what is it? They start looking around the camp and they know that it's the cauldron. Kind of how Nesta used her scrying power to find out where the cauldron was. The cauldron hates Nesta, so the cauldron is like, okay, two can play that game. And now the cauldron is kind of looking down at them. Nobody else can hear this, but people start coming out of their tent because they hear Nesta and Feyre freaking out, right? And once they're kind of satisfied that the cauldron is done watching them or whatever, Varian is like, I guess like only you guys can hear it because you were made. Oh, and Amren also could hear. And Feyre's like, yeah, just me, Nesta, Amren, and God damn it, everybody forgot Elaine. They're like, where's Elaine? They start looking around, and of fucking course, she's been taken. Asriel, of course, wastes no time. He's like, I'm gonna go get her, and everyone's like, you're gonna die if you go straight into Hybern's camp, because it's very clear that Hybern took her. And he's like, I don't know why you keep saying that, as if that's gonna stop me, all right? I'm gonna go. Feyre stands up, and Asriel is like, no fucking way are you gonna tell me not to go. And Feyre's like, don't worry, babe, I'm coming with you. Rhysand is sort of like, ooh, I wish he wouldn't, but like, choices. Off they go, Asriel and Feyre, into the heart of Hybern's camp. Obviously, Feyre isn't just going to walk into the camp looking like the High Lady of the Night Court, so she actually glamours herself to look like who? Ianthe. She is hoping that Hybern hasn't noticed that Ianthe has died, and Ianthe has a reason to be at the camp. Like, she has very 100% fully allied with him, so she goes ahead, walks straight into the camp, just looking like Ianthe. She's looking around, and who does she bump into? But Jurian. And he looks at her and is just like 100%, oh, hey, Feyre. He is not convinced by her Ianthe glamour, and he's basically just like, girl, what are you doing here? Bad idea. Luckily for her, Jurian knows where Elaine is. It takes her a lot of pressuring, but he finally tells her what tent to look in. But as they are talking, she looks over through the camp and she sees that there's like this wall, and there are 3 children of the blessed nailed to the wall. 2 of them are very clearly dead, but one of them is still kind of alive. And she immediately gets a flashback to Claire, because remember, Claire was hung on the wall dead by Amarantha the whole time under the mountain. Feyre is just like, straight up, I cannot leave her. Like, she is still alive. I'm gonna go get her. And Jurian is like, okay, girl, like this bad idea just became a really bad idea. But he knows that he's not gonna stop her. So he's like, listen, just, you know what they're gonna do to you if they catch you alive. So don't let them catch you alive. He's like, listen, I'm gonna do what I can. I will try and grab the girl and I will meet you at the cliff where they're gonna escape from. I'll meet you at the cliff in like 5 minutes. And if you aren't there, I'm out. Okay, like this is the most I can do. Feyre finds Azriel. They run into the tent. They find Elaine. She is tied up with some kind of spell that they can't break. So Azriel just like picks her up and like slings her over his shoulder and they just start running. As they are running for the cliff, they notice something's up in the camp, I guess, and Hybern starts chasing them. Now they're dodging arrows. Azriel has a girl on his back. Like, it's a mess. We knew it was going to be a mess, but like everything that could go wrong did go wrong, okay? They do end up getting to the cliff. Jurian is not there. He just dumped the girl. So we've got another girl that we have to carry. And when they get to the cliff, they realize we've got to fly out of here. Azriel's strong, but he's not gonna carry 3 women. He's got Feyre, Elaine, and now this random human girl to take care of. Elaine is tied up with magic. The human girl is nearly dead. So both of them are like straight up dead weight. And Azriel's just like, Feyre, remember those flying lessons? This is when Hybern releases literal hounds. There are just like these demon dogs chasing them now. I'm pretty sure Azriel gets maybe hit with an arrow. I don't know, but it's just really bad. So they just start running for the cliff and Feyre is like, if I don't make the jump, you know? And I guess the cliff isn't high enough. Like there's a possibility that she might live, but she's like, if I hit the bottom and I'm injured, they're just gonna drag me up and torture me. So like, she's almost like, I either hope that I fly or die. Like, I don't want any in between. She's trying to tell Azriel to just go without her. And then she recognizes a particular roar. A golden furred beast with curled horns, the head of a wolf, but with antlers, tore through the hounds. Tamlin. He gets close enough and his green eyes narrowed, seeming to say, run. Feyre has a moment to look back at King Hybern, who is like in the trees, and his face is shocked. He was not expecting Tamlin to turn on him. Azriel just kind of grabs Feyre by the collar and is like, we gotta go, girl, like start running. Tamlin, meanwhile, is like holding everybody back so they can figure out what the fuck they're doing. Tamlin let out a yelp of what sounded like pain, followed by another ear-shattering roar. They finally get to where they're going to take off. Azriel is about to lift off when finally, I guess, a hound gets through and bites onto Azriel's wing. And this is when Elaine, quiet, precious little Elaine, goes fucking feral and starts attacking this dog. He gets airborne. He turns around to watch Feyre take her little leap. There was a terror in Azriel's eyes for the first time I had ever known him. With barely 3 steps left to the edge of the cliff, a warm wind kissed with lilac and new grass lifted up from beneath me. She jumps. This spring wind helps her get the lift off. She unleashes a little bit of Helian power, blows a hole in the wards so that they can get out of Helian's camp, and she is able to winnow. She looks back. Tamlin is still surrounded by the dogs, bleeding profusely and panting. He's still in his beast form. Hybern is so pissed. He's just like looking at the 2 of them flying away that he doesn't notice Tamlin jumping. Tamlin leaps farther than any beast or fae should have been able to. He cleared the wards and went away, still not looking at me, as I gripped Azriel's hand and we vanished as well. So without Tamlin's little of spring wind, Feyre probably would have been dead. So we get a very sweet sister reunion. They are all hugging and crying. Nesta's like, thank you, Feyre, for saving my favorite sister for me, basically. But they all go to sleep together in the same bed like they used to back in their little hovel. Okay, the next day, the Winter Court's army has arrived in camp. So when Feyre comes out of her tent, she sees that Mor is hanging out with Vivian and the other Winter Court ladies. And they happen to have that human that Feyre saved with them. The human's name is Briar. She's really surprised to see Briar like hanging on to the Winter Court ladies. She's like really bonded with them. They seem really nice. They end up going off to their tent. And this is when she kind of realizes, oops, still haven't really talked to Mor since our last fight. So she kind of goes up, and Moore is the first one to say something. She's like, that was really brave what you did saving Briar. And Feyre's like, anyone would have done it. And Moore's like, no, actually, like, I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have deemed that risk worth it. Because remember, Azriel carrying 2 wounded people almost died. And it turns out that actually his wing injury that he got is putting him out of the battle. He's not allowed to fly. He's only allowed to like give instruction from the sidelines, which is really bad to lose someone as powerful as Azriel, right? And Moore is basically like, I just keep thinking about the last things that we said to each other. And if you hadn't come back alive from that mission, like I never would have forgiven myself. So no lies between us anymore, okay? And they agree and they forgive each other. And this is where we get to another possibly controversial part of the book. People have thoughts about the way that it's talked about. I'm not going to give my opinion. Think what you want. I'm not going to give my opinion. Ooh, my opinion is on the tip of my tongue. Think what you want. Moore tells us, I don't love Azriel. No, that's not true. I do love him as my family, and sometimes I wonder if I can be more, but I don't love him, not in the way that he does for me. I can't love him like that. Why? Because she prefers females, always has, man. She finds pleasure in both. Slept with Helion, right? But I've known since I was little more than a child that I prefer females. I connect with them, care for them on a soul deep level. But at the court of nightmares where she was raised, that is not okay because women are only good for breeding. And she says that she sleeps with men partly because she does enjoy it, but also just to kind of keep people from looking too closely, And we also learn something really sad, which is during the war, Moore actually fell in love with a human woman and they had this wonderful romance. But then when the war ended, her lover stays in the human realm and Moore starts flying back to Prythian, and she realizes mid-flight, like, oh, I fucked up. I love this woman. And she's like, I don't care if she's mortal. I'm going to stay with her for as long as she's alive. Moore turns around, flies back, but the wall had already been put up. It took her 3 years to find a way to get over the wall. And by the time she was there, the woman that she loved was married and had an infant and had another baby on the way. And Moore was didn't even stop in to say hi, But hundreds of years later, Moore gets to meet one of her descendants. And who was it? The Golden Queen, the queen who gave them the other half of the book, apparently was like a great granddaughter of the woman that she loved, and she looks a lot like her. And then she got killed. Like, it's just a long heartbreaking story. I want like one happy story from Moore. Like, everything we learn about her life, there has not been a single happy thing. So add this one to the list of heartbreak. And ever since then, she's never really felt a love as strong as that. So she just has like really surface level relationships. And as far as Azriel goes, he does really love her, but she knows that she couldn't love him as deeply as she knows that she's capable, so it would feel kind of like a sham. And that's sort of why she slept with Helion that night, because remember earlier in that day, they had a meeting and Baron said some shit to Moore and Azriel kind of blew up and defended her. Moore kind of slept with Helion to hurt Azriel and to remind him that she's not his and stuff like that. And she says, I know that that's cruel and I hate that I'm even saying it. And Moore hasn't told anybody else about this. And Feyre's like, tell people when you want to and I'll be there to support you if it's tomorrow or in 500 years. Some people think that the whole conversation is overkill. Think what you want. She's been keeping a secret for like 500 years. Maybe she wants to monologue for 2 or 3 pages about her feelings. I don't know. Of all the problems in the book, I feel like a bisexual fairy coming out for 3 pages isn't like the most horrible thing. Later that day, the High Lords all come together and they notice that Hybern's army is moving in really strange ways. He's trying to take over Prythian, right? And why is he heading straight to the human realms? They're trying to figure this out when Nesta is like, you guys, we're talking about a fucking unhinged, tiny little man. He's pissed at us, the sisters, and so he's going straight for the human realm just to spite us. And they're all kind of like, that makes sense because Nesta took something of the Cauldron from him. Feyre killed his priestess. Taking Elaine was the final straw. And so they know that they do not have the time to get all of their armies to the human realm to defend the humans. Even Grayson's little compound thing isn't going to help them. So Feyre just jumps in and is like, all right, everybody hands up. Who can winnow? and they are going to winnow people back and forth. She turns to Rhysand and is like, can we open Valeris to them? And Rhys is like, honestly, that's going to take way too much time to winnow humans like individually back and forth to Valeris, literally the farthest away from the human realm. Like, no. And this is when Tarquin pipes up and he's like, Cressida, ready my capital city. And so everyone's gonna go on a little beach vacay. They're gonna stay at the summer court, which is great. This is when Amren like pops into the tent and is like, hey, are we going to battle with Hybern? And everyone's like, yeah. And she's like, cool, because we need you guys as a distraction because we're gonna go get the Cauldron. And Tarquin is like, you found a way to stop it? And she's like, oh buddy, better than that. I found a way to kill his entire army. Okay, which the Suriel said is the problem, right? That even if they got rid of the Cauldron, he still has all these forces that could potentially still win the war. Okay, basically her plan, she has some knowledge from the book, but she's like, remember how Feyre's brain was coming out of her nose when she tried to touch the Cauldron? What if all 4 of us touched it and shared the power because we're all made? Right? So that's the plan. Anyway, we'll hear about that later when we get to battle. First, the humans. Long story short, Rhysand has to like mind control some of them because they don't want to go and they're scared of fairies, whatever. Anyway, he just like drops them off with Cressida and is like, good luck. They are all super tired the next night from doing all of this. They're basically like looking at the battlefield like, we're not walking out of this. And as they're laying in bed, Rhysand has fallen asleep and Feyre just kind of looks over at him and she's like, I know this guy's gonna pull some fuckery. I know it was as much a part of him as his limbs that need to sacrifice to protect. But I wouldn't let him do it. Not without trying myself. So off she goes to the Court of Nightmares to face the Ouroboros. Fast forward, I'm skipping the scene. Nothing really happens. We are now in the prison and the Bone Carver takes one look at Feyre and is like, oh shit. You got it. And he's like, how'd you manage that one, girl? Feyre has trouble speaking because after she has quote unquote returned to this body, things feel weird. And so she just says, I looked. I didn't know how long had passed. Time was different inside the mirror. But now she's like, I'm ready for battle. Hold up your end of the bargain. All right, I did this shit. And he's like, oh, baby. It would be my pleasure. And he just like tosses the mirror behind him and Feyre is like, not again. He didn't actually give a shit. Just like Amren lied about the necklace and she was just like, meh, you know? The Bone Carver's like, oh yeah, I didn't need it. I just kind of wanted to see if you were worth it, you know? How much you fight, right? I wanted to see if you were worth helping. It's a rare person who faces who they truly are and not run from it, not be broken by it. So that's what the mirror shows. You look into it and it shows you every like despicable part of you and you have to face it, right? I wouldn't risk leaving here for anyone less. And Feyre is just like, okay. But she was not afraid as she grabbed the Bone Carver's cold hand. Let's begin. Cassian gives Nesta a big old knife and he's like, just stab with it. He's like, I don't have time to train you, but like pointy end away from you, okay? Cassian then tries to give Elaine a knife and she is like, no, 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 no. She gets really freaked out, but then Azriel gives her his knife. He's like, why don't you just hold this for me? Can you keep it safe? And Elaine is like, I don't know how to use this. And he's like, it's okay. This is a special knife. It always strikes true. So don't you worry. Keep it safe for me. And Elaine actually takes it. Cassian is looking at Azriel like his eyeballs are gonna fall out. And Feyre in her head is like, I wonder how many times he's lent out his knife like that. Like Cassian looks a little shaken and Rhys says, never. I have never once seen Azriel let another person touch that knife. Okay. Then we get a really sad speech from Rhysand, okay? He doesn't go Braveheart style. He goes really heartwarming and personal. He goes down the line and tells every single person how they have made his life better and how he is honored to have been with them. And it sure as hell sounds like a goodbye speech. At this point, they're all crying. They're all holding hands. If it is decided in the tapestry of fate that we do not walk off that field today, the greatest joy and honor in my life has been to know you all, to have called you my family. I'm grateful more than I can possibly say that I was given this time with you all. But now it is time to make Hybern very ungrateful. to have known us. As they are all lined up, getting ready to run into battle, Rhysand is standing next to Feyre, and he's like, gonna be real with you here, girl. I'm scared. This isn't this. And Feyre tries to brighten the mood, and she's like, I actually never got you a mating present. And Rhysand is kind of like, you're talking about this now? And Feyre just keeps going. She's like, yeah, I've just been thinking, and you are a really hard person to buy for. This is what I got. And she turns around, and down her back is a tattoo of the phases of the moon. And Rhysand is kind of like, I'm into it, girl, but why are we doing this now? But part 2 of her present comes out seconds later when she releases the glamour that she had been holding. Standing on their front line is a whirling cloud of darkness, and Asriel is just like, mother above, as another figure approaches the shadows. And who is it? The Bone Carver. And who is that little nest of shadows? Bryaxis. That tattoo on Feyre's back was a bargain tattoo, kind of like what she and Rhysand had, but she struck a bargain with those two crazy-ass creatures. Not to be outdone, though, Rhysand is like, you beat me to it, girl. I have a present for you, too. And he releases a glamour. Who's underneath there? The Weaver. Yeah, he sent Helion to the Weaver to ask her to join their battle, and that's actually why Helion was even in the forest. Remember when Feyre led Ianthe into the Weaver's house? That's why he was even there. So it's all coming together, right? And Rhysand just says, here's to family reunions. And then the Weaver, the Carver, and Bryaxis unleashed themselves upon Hybern. We just get a massive battle scene. Honestly, it's chaotic. Rhysand is throwing out his power like we have never seen before, okay? But even with that, it's absolute chaos. And that is when, out of the blue, Eris pops up. But not only Eris, Grayson, and the human forces. Not only that, but Baron shows up. And who else? Yep, Tamlin. Everybody's here now, okay? We've got everyone represented. Isn't that nice? Everyone's looking at Baron like, why the fuck are you here? Eris is like, ooh, yeah, Tamlin made him come. He actually dragged my dad out by like the collar of his coat. It was great to see. Tamlin's not fucking around, okay? He's in beast mode for the rest of the book. I just want you to know, all right? He's not here to play. But now it is time for our 4 maid girls to make a run for the cauldron. They see it set up on the hill. They start running, and Nesta kind of stumbles, and all of a sudden she's just like,
Cassian!
He gets distracted and actually comes towards Nesta like, what? He's kind of flying off course like, what are you talking about? And that's when the cauldron explodes. It shredded Asriel's shield, Rhysand's shield, all the other smaller shields, and it wiped out thousands of soldiers in 1 second. And Nesta had known. She'd known moments before where the blast was about to hit, and Cassian had been right in the center. And so if she hadn't called him away, he would have been blasted and dead. Absolutely. So she had like 1 second to warn anybody, and that's what she chose to do. Rhysand is looking at her like he understood what Nesta just did, and he doesn't know whether to scold her for the guilt Cassian will no doubt feel or thank her for saving him, because thousands of Cassian's men just died. And as a general, him like running from it, yeah, he's gonna feel bad about that later. And then the cauldron just starts firing off. It hits one other person, and Feyre says, I could have sworn he looked towards me as the cauldron's power crashed over him. I could have sworn he smiled, and it was not a hideous thing at all. There and gone, the cauldron wiped the bone carver away without any sign of effort. Rest in peace, man. Then they look out into the distance, and a freaking armada is coming, as if they weren't already hurting because they've got the freaking cauldron on their side. Now they've got the navy. Like, what the hell? Feyre and the maid girls have to speed things up, but Elaine is terrified. Elaine cannot do battle, okay? They really overestimated her. So Elaine has to go off somewhere. Nesta, because now they're constantly firing the cauldron, Nesta is just convulsing, so she cannot move. So it's just Feyre and Amren that have to do it. And Amren's basically like, we've got to go before those ships land, okay? So, ready to run? Right before they run, Rhys tells Feyre, like, this is our final move. If everything else goes to hell and you look back and we're all dead, I want you to run. Like, don't try and save everything. You can't do this by yourself. Like, please just run. And Feyre is getting pissed. She's like, you told me no goodbyes, okay? We weren't going to do this. And honestly, I can't make this part funny. I can't make this part funny. There are no jokes. And Cassian basically says, I'll see you guys all on the other side. And doesn't sound like he's talking about the battle. They are about to all jump into battle, all about to die, when Rhysand goes utterly still. Sailing over the eastern horizon were thousands upon thousands of winged soldiers. Below them was another armada, far more than Hybern's. It was Draken's Seraphim Legion. Oh yeah, the angels are here, okay? All of the winged people fly up to meet this one guy who flies in, and he's basically like, you could have fucking asked for help, man. What the hell? It's Draken. He doesn't really introduce himself, but it's Draken. He's like, I had to learn about this battle through the rumor mill. And Rhysand is like, bro, we have been looking for you for months. What's up? And he's like, oh yeah, sorry. We found out that our shields are actually like too good. So it hit us from our enemies, but it also kind of hit us from our friends. So like, my bad. That's why Azriel kept going to look for them and it looked like the place was abandoned. Oops. And Rhysand is like, what about those ships over there? Like, are those friends of yours? And Draken's like, no, I think they're friends of yours. And Nesta's like, what? Draken tells us that in the ships is none other than Queen Vasa, the cursed queen, the like bird queen thing. And Feyre's like, oh, okay, Lucien found him. Like, Lucien's our friend, right? And Draken's like, oh, you mean the dude with one eyeball? No, I think he came later. And Nesta is like, who found Vasa? She said it with the same flat tone, as if somehow she already knew. Draken's like, I don't know. He calls himself like the king of merchants. Apparently he's been gathering an independent human army or something like that. I don't know. Seems like a cool dude. He told me this cool story about how he's got like 3 daughters who actually live here in Prithian, and you know, he's failed them his whole life, but he's not gonna fail them now. I mean, it was extraordinary, really inspiring. And you know, he even named his ships after them. How cool is that? And they look into the distance, and if you lean a little closer and you squint, you can see the ships are called the Feyre, the Elaine, and the Nesta, where my father stood at the helm. Okay, so remember when Feyre and the gang first went to go get the sisters on board with inviting the mortal queens to their house? They mentioned that their dad was gone on business. Turns out that, I guess he went to some kind of merchant meeting. It didn't seem like that big of a deal. It was just kind of slipped in there to the plot. I guess he got wind of the mortal queens were kind of doing some suspicious stuff, and he put it all together, went off to get this goddamn army. Go dad, okay? He ended up coming across Queen Vasa, and now she just like goes out into the battlefield as like a full firebird, and so they've got another monster on their list. Okay. Draken gives Cassian the go-ahead to control his angel army, and as they're kind of like watching their dad still come in on the ships, Feyre's like, we gotta go to the Cauldron right now. Like, family reunion can wait. And Nesta is like, hold on, you aren't gonna get there with Hybern standing right next to you. Use me as bait. And Cassian immediately is just like, nope. And Nesta straight up ignores Cassian as usual, and she's like, listen, I can coax Hybern out. Like, he wants to kill me, so let me distract Hybern, and then you guys can run to the Cauldron. Cassian is like, he will kill you, and Nesta is like, yeah, that's where you come in, buddy. You're gonna protect me. Rhysand kind of didn't say anything about Nesta using herself as bait, but the second Cassian gets involved, he's like, no, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. But at this point, his High Lord title doesn't mean shit. Cassian literally says, you gave everything, Rhys, when you went through hell for us for 50 years. Let us return the favor. There's no debt to repay. Rhys's voice broke. The sound of it cracked my heart. Off the bait goes. Amren just turns to Feyre right before they jump into battle, and she's like, don't look back. And so Feyre doesn't. Somehow they make it to the Cauldron. As they're going to the Cauldron, the Weaver gets killed, so that's a bummer. Amren is basically like, okay, Feyre, touch the Cauldron. Feyre grabs it, immediately feels like her soul is being leached from her body. She's like, I can't even remember my name. She's like losing herself completely. And she looks at Amren, and Amren's just standing there, not touching the Cauldron, not reading from the book. Amren closed the book and shoved it behind her. Whatever trap she had set, I had fallen right into it. Sorry I lied is all Amren said. What? Feyre feels her life literally slipping away from her, so she kind of looks over the battlefield and she sees Rhys has gone full beast mode. Like, we've seen him transform a little bit. Like, he's got wings, but he's also got like other stuff. He transforms into like the most terrifying fucking thing Feyre has ever seen, apparently. He just starts ripping apart the army. Helion jumps in and he is apparently the son to whatever knight version of the beast Rhysand is. And so both of them just go wild. And because Feyre is connected to the Cauldron, she's kind of like everywhere at once. Everywhere the Cauldron is, she is. And so she tunes in to Nesta. She can feel power bubbling out of Nesta and she realizes, oh no, she's not trying to be a distraction. She's really going to kill him. She feels Nesta using her powers to call the King of Hybern, and it works. He winnows directly in front of them, but when he lands, Cassian doesn't strike him. Why? Because he is holding a knife to her father's throat. Yes, he somehow got a hold of Dad, and now he's using him as a human shield. So, oh shit. I am absolutely not going to read any of this because it's all her dad telling her how much he loves her and how proud he is of her and how sorry he is that he failed her. And just, I'm not going to cry in this video, so absolutely not sorry, guys. And then the King of Hybern just starts like making these demands. He's like, I'm going to take the power out of you even if I have to carve it out of your dead body. And Dad is like, don't you dare touch my daughter. I heard the crack before I realized what happened. The King of Hybern had snapped my father's neck. Ugh. What is it with these people and snapping necks? My God. The world like goes black for Nesta. She is just in complete shock, but not Cassian. Cassian just like straight up attacks the king, and suddenly his wings have been snapped. There's blood gushing out of them. His like thigh bone is sticking out. I mean, it's really nasty. And basically the King of Hybern, he has powers himself. Like, he's not just this random guy. So he fucked Cassian up. Nesta is like boiling over with the power that she has from the Cauldron, and so she goes to shoot it at Hybern. Hybern winnows at the last second and she ends up just killing like 1,000 of his troops. Whatever, he doesn't care. Nesta never learned how to control her power, so she doesn't know how to aim it or like anything like that. So she's just getting so frustrated. She's no match for the King of Hybern. She ends up picking up the knife that Cassian gave her, but she's also never trained with a knife, so he disarms her in like one move. She's not trying to kill him at this point. She's just trying to get him away from Cassian, and once she gets him where she wants him, she has like a little bit of power left, and she just kind of goes like boop and like pushes him back into the trees, like shoots him through the forest. So he's gone for now. All right. She runs over to Cassian. Cassian obviously can't do anything. He can't winnow. He can't fly. He can't walk.
You can't swim, you can't dance, and you don't know karate.
Nesta's trying to carry him, and she's just like, you are a big man. I cannot help you. Cassian, of course, is screaming at Nesta to run away, and Nesta's like, I can't. Cassian, grunting in pain, lifted his bloody hands to cup her face. I have no regrets in my life but this, his voice rough with every word. That we did not have time, that I did not have time with you, Nesta. She didn't hit him too hard, so Hybern comes walking back through the trees. He's got like leaves in his hair, and he's like, all right, I'm back. And Nesta just throws herself on Cassian, covers her body with his, and is like, gotta take us both if you're gonna take us, man. Feyre, again, this whole book is from Feyre's POV, so Feyre's the one watching this. She still has her hands on the Cauldron, and she's like, hey, Cauldron, I will give you anything, my soul, if you just step in, fix this mess, save my sister, save Cassian. The king is just kind of laughing at Nesta, staring down at them, and she can see that the power is ready to go in his hands, and they will die the moment that he strikes. The king's hand began to rise and then halted. A choking noise came out of him, and for a moment I thought that the Cauldron had answered my plea. But as a black blade broke through the king's throat, spraying blood, I realized someone else had. Elaine steps out of the shadows behind him. Don't you touch my sister. Oh yeah, Elaine finally fucking did something other than grow goddamn tomatoes. Elaine used Azriel's knife that always strikes true. But, so, yay, Hybern is dead. Nesta picks up her sword and, like, finishes the job by, like, straight up beheading him. King is dead. Cool. Not cool. Elaine has been, like, kind of in hiding this whole time, so she didn't notice her dad had been killed. And so she's now looking at the ground like, oh. Also, the battle doesn't stop just because the king is dead. So everyone is still fighting. Nothing has really changed, even though this like monumental scene has just occurred. This is when Feyre notices that Rhysand's magic is faltering. He has used it all. He has been going at full force for so long that he's kind of like sputtering out, and she feels like she's fully slipping away when Amren just straight up slaps her across the face. God, pull yourself together! And Feyre is like, what is actually going on? Feyre looks at Amren and she's like, the king is dead and you're going to be too. And Amren's like, yeah, I need your help with that, okay? Focus. And Feyre is just lost, okay? Amren explains. Remember how the Suriel told Feyre to tell Amren, like, the answer to everything is on the second page and the penultimate page of the book, you know? That was a little secret message for Amren. It wasn't a spell about how to control the cauldron. It was the spell to how to unbind her from her body. Amren is like, I wasn't sure, but once you finally got the Ouroboros mirror, you proved to me that you were strong enough to handle this. Like, I know that you could handle holding the cauldron. I didn't need your sisters. I just like to involve them, you know? So I need you to hold on to this while I remove myself from my body, and I'm going to kill everything in sight. Problems with this, okay, is that once she does the unbinding spell, the Amren that we know and love will be no longer. It's very probable that she will lose all of her memory. She will just go back to being whatever the fuck she is, okay? She's basically like, when you do this, hide. This is when Varian appears out of fucking nowhere. Amren cracks up. She's like, man, he is like a hound on the scent. He always knows where I am. Their relationship is very cute. And Varian is like, please don't. Like, please don't leave me, you know? And Amren just straight up ignores him. She looks at Feyre and she's like, you know, I was always really jealous that humans and fae could build these beautiful things. And so once I became part of the inner circle, I was just so happy to be a part of it and be with you, so thank you. And then she turns to Varian and she's like, I was also so jealous of humans and fae that fell in love, and I never really understood what it was, but I think I learned a little bit of what it was with you. I think that was like my last gift in this life. Varian is choking up. Feyre still just like has no fucking clue what's going on. Amren tells Feyre the spell that she needs to say, and she says, when I'm free, don't run. It will attract my attention. And then she says, I'm glad we met. And she just cannonballs into the cauldron. This happens over about a matter of seconds. Amren jumps in, something else comes out. Feyre's like, all I remember seeing is that whatever it is kind of looks at us, tips its head, sort of saying like, I remember you, and then kills fucking everything and disappears into a bright light. Amren is gone, guys. So Varian is sobbing. Feyre is kind of starting to understand what just happened, so she's shaken. But all the good guys lived. So yay, everybody is shouting in victory. It's great. They locate everybody, make sure everybody's alive. Feyre and Varian meet up with everybody, and she's checking. Rhysand has like barely retransformed into a human. Like she's never seen him this low on power before, and everyone's about to have a really happy like, wow, we did it moment. And Varian is like, ooh, we got a problem. Basically, when Amren went into the cauldron and came out, she broke the cauldron and split it into 3 pieces, which is like, yay, we broke the cauldron. No, because the cauldron is what makes everything. And so if you break the cauldron, the entire world will be destroyed. Okay, so basically the world is collapsing. We got to do something about it. It doesn't matter if you win the war when the earth doesn't exist anymore. Feyre has the bright idea of, well, if I'm made with a capital M, maybe I can remake something, you know? Rhys and Feyre go up to the cauldron, and Feyre's big idea is literally to just throw the Book of Breathings into the cauldron. Nothing happens. Rhysand is like, okay, that was an interesting idea. That was her one big plan. So she's like, I don't know what to do. Rhysand is like, okay, Amren said that you were a conduit, right? Why don't you be one again? Basically, he has like no power left. Feyre has no power left, but together they have like a little. So he's like, let's combine. She really doesn't want to do it because, again, he's like shaking. She's never seen him this low on power before. But he's like, please just do it, okay? And Feyre's like, you know, there's a spell that Amren taught me, and I bet if I switch the words around, it'll work, because that sounds probable, right? And he kind of goes, yeah, that's the spirit. Humor danced in his eyes. He's feeling pretty chipper, even though he's like teetering on the edge of death. And Feyre's just kind of like, not now, buddy. Not now. And she does it. She touches the cauldron. She can feel Rhysand's power somehow flowing directly through her. He's like holding her shoulders or something. She finds the ability to weld. So anyway, there are 3 cracks. They end up finishing 2 of them, and she feels that like both of them are out of power. But every time that they close one of the cracks, this like void that the cauldron made in the world that's like a black hole gonna swallow everybody, it gets smaller. So they're like, keep going. Rhysand just keeps whispering like, I love you, I love you, I love you. But I needed more power, and he gave it to me. Rhys handed over everything. I love you, he whispered into my mind. And the 3rd and final crack welded over. They saved the goddamn world. Isn't that great? We had done it. She turns around. It took a moment for me to grasp it, what I saw. Rhys was sprawled on the rocky ground. He looks like he's asleep, but as I breathed in, it wasn't there. That thing that rose and fell with each breath, that echoed each heartbeat, the mating bond, it wasn't there. Because his own chest, it wasn't moving. Rhysand was dead. And that's the end of A Court of... I'm kidding. Take a breath. To say that Feyre implodes is an understatement. Rhysand is dead. Holy crap, Sarah J. Maas. Feyre like goes deep inside herself searching for the bond, and she just hears silence and she's just screaming. She doesn't know if she's screaming out loud or in her head. She feels like an entire piece of her soul was just ripped out, and then everybody comes running over to them. They're all talking to her, but she can't really hear them. She's freaking out. Obviously, she's going over the last couple seconds, and she realized him repeating, I love you, I love you, I love you, wasn't just like a, oh, hey, by the way, love you, girl. He was saying goodbye. He knew that he was using the last bit of his power and that that was going to end him. She does manage to get a handle of herself long enough to make sure that Lucien looks at Rhysand and has like the healing power, and he just kind of glances at him and is like, this is not in my toolbox. He is like dead. Tarquin just kind of comes over and kneels next to Feyre, and he's just like, I'm sorry. It was those 2 words that shattered me in a way I didn't know I could still be broken. Stay with the High Lord, the Suriel's last warning. Stay and live to see everything righted. Feyre is like in the fetal position, rocking back and forth, and she keeps saying what the Suriel said. She's like, stay. And then she snaps up and she's like, bring him back. She's looking at all the other High Lords. She's like, you did it for me. Bring him back. And they're all like, that was kind of different. Like, you were a human. They're like, he's a High Lord, and like, we don't really know how that's gonna happen. And he's like, dead, girl. And Feyre's like, does it look like I care? Do it. No questions asked, Tarquin steps up, our favorite High Lord, okay? Honestly, he could rule the whole damn Prythian. He immediately steps up and is like, oh yeah, here you go. Gives him a drop. He is followed by Helion, Callias. I realized I keep switching. And Thiessen. Baron is just standing there like a fucking waste of space. Moore straight up just draws her sword and she's like, I'm not done killing today, Baron. What do you think about it? And Baron generously donates to the cause. And Feyre is like, okay, now how do I do it? Because remember, she's High Lady. She's a rep of the Night Court. So she doesn't know how. And so Thiessen teaches her how to drop a bit of her power onto Rhysand's throat. I realized just as he appeared what was missing, and Tamlin walks up. He just kind of stands there looking at the scene like, And Feyre just looks at him and says, please, I'll do anything. Something shifted in his eyes at that. Feyre kind of turns away and is just staring down at Rhysand because she doesn't have a whole lot of hope in Tamlin. She hears footsteps coming towards her and they kind of stop long enough that she turns to look. Tamlin stood there staring down at me with those green eyes, swimming with some emotion I couldn't place. Be happy, Feyre, he said quietly, and dropped that final kernel of light on Rhysand. Feyre doesn't know what's supposed to happen now because remember, she was the dead one last time, so she never witnessed this. So she's just kind of looking like, okay, is he gonna like pop like popcorn? Like what? So she just hugs him and then like walks them through their whole goddamn love story. She just tells him from beginning to end, like, remember this? We weren't done. And then she hears a little thump and then another and another. If we're all here, then things either went very, very wrong or very, very right. Yes, ma'am. Rhysand is in the building. Feyre's just kind of sitting there like, is this a hallucination? Like, have I finally cracked? And he's like, oh, no, this is real. And he's like, and I'm not even done with the surprises. He is so peppy from being dead a couple seconds ago. He's like, oh no, guys, wait till you see what I got up my sleeve. And what is it? Rhysand kind of smiles and is like, yeah, can somebody go fish her out of there before she catches a cold? She's like wet as a fish. And Varian just turns to the cauldron and is like, who comes out? Apparently, while Rhys was dying, they were both like flying through whatever ether is like where you go when you die. And as he was being pulled back by all the High Lords, he was kind of like, yo, Amren, you want to come back with me? And she's kind of like, yeah, okay. And he dragged her back to the land of the living. These loopholes, my God. The funny thing is, though, her eyes are no longer silver. She kind of comes back as, we don't know. She's not mortal. She's not human. She's maybe still not Fae, but she's not whatever she was, okay? The sisters go off to recollect their dad's body and give him a proper burial. It's very sweet. And then I know you're wondering where he is. Here he comes. Lucien. He went straight from like going off on his mission to find Vasa to jumping straight into battle. So he didn't like stop to say hey or anything like that. He's here and he actually is able to talk to the girls and be like, I was on that boat for a really long time with your dad and I met him and he was so cool and he was so proud of you. And he's able to share all these really great memories with them, which is like just like a really nice way to say goodbye. And so he does that for them and it's very sweet. And then they go back to the camp where everybody is reconvening. And this is where we finally get to meet Miriam. Remember, Miriam and Draken, the people who aren't on the wall, who totally should be on the wall. Isaac's on the wall. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, we get to meet Miriam. Feyre immediately likes this girl. She walks in and she's like, ooh, I like her. Fun fact, when they got on the battlefield, Miriam and Draken like cornered Jurian and were trying to kill him because I guess he didn't like apologize fast enough. Remember, he wanted to beg for their forgiveness. Oops. But luckily Moore stepped in and she was like, oh, hold on. Don't kill him yet. Maybe let him live for a little bit longer. And so Jurian is alive thanks to Moore. I don't think that they've kissed and made up yet though. So save that for another day. He is going back to the human realm. Queen Vasa actually offered him a role and he's kind of like, why would I go with you, Firebird Queen? But yeah, he's not with us. He has went with the humans to help them rebuild and recover. And anyway, as we're talking to Miriam, Feyre suddenly has a brilliant beyond brilliant idea. You know how your shields were really good and how we couldn't find you? Why don't you guys take the cauldron. And at first they're sort of like, ugh, like we really would rather not be near that thing. But they understand like the cauldron can't be destroyed. As we saw, it opens up a black hole and everybody's going to die. But it needs to be hidden. And who do people trust and who has a really good hiding spot? Miriam and Draken. So eventually they agree. We get a very long scene of the High Lords trying to come up with another treaty. Because remember, the wall has been destroyed. Like, they're trying to figure that out. This is when Tamlin sees Lucien for the first time since he ran away, basically. And remember how Lucien only brought the clothes that he ran away with? And so Rhysand, right before Lucien went on that mission to find Vasa, Rhysand gave him Illyrian fighting gear. Again, Lucien hasn't changed clothes, so he still is just wearing the fighting gear. And Tamlin sees Lucien dressed as an Illyrian soldier, and he kind of puts two and two together, and he's like, okay, I see where your loyalties lie. That's another thing that we can save for another day. The bromance is going to take a while to repair. Vasa, we get to meet Vasa. She is still cursed, and so she goes up to Feyre, who is known as Curse Breaker, and she's like, can you break it? And Feyre's like, I don't know. We still don't. There's like a Dark Lord sorcerer who did this to her. So she's like, really? I don't want to make any promises. I don't know. And Vasa's like, that's fine. I'm gonna keep an eye on these queens, make sure they don't pull any stupid shit, and just let me know if you happen to find a way to make me not turn into a firebird every single day. They honestly don't get much done with the treaty, but they all leave feeling like they have a little bit of hope. And then we get back to Valeris. They all go take baths. They wash off blood that Feyre realizes has been on them for like weeks. So they get that all scrubbed off. The children, the goddamn children, are still laughing in the streets. Feyre just kind of looks around and she's like, as promised, the house has not changed, but perhaps we have. Number one being that Amren is apparently even more cranky now that she doesn't have this like creepy ass soul in her body anymore. And the second thing is that Nesta's acting strange. So remember how she's really tied to the cauldron? The cauldron broke and like got put back together, but still, you know? And she's not really talking about it, not really talking to anyone. She hasn't even gone to see Cassian while he's healing. Because remember, he got broken wings, broken legs, all that stuff. Hasn't even visited him. She's just kind of like blank. The fire is gone. So... And then Feyre writes Tamlin a little note, and she basically just says, thank you, and I hope that you find happiness too. And she means it. She knows that he has hurt her greatly, but she also knows that he is healing and he is trying, and she wants him to eventually get to a place where he's happy as well. So baby steps as well. Nesta goes off to be by herself after dinner. Rhysand goes into the kitchen to go get alcohol for the party, and they're all just kind of sitting in the sitting room, and Feyre is like, what now? You know, like her whole life for the past 2 years has been war, so she's sort of like, okay. And Elaine, of all people, starts talking, and she says, I would like to build a garden after all this. I think the world needs more gardens. My throat was too tight to immediately reply, so I just kissed my sister's cheek before I said, yes, I think it does. Elaine, her garden obsession, man, it is... The next chapter is in Rhysand's point of view. He, like I said, has gone to the kitchen to collect alcohol for the after-dinner drinks, you know. He kind of feels something in here, in his chest, and he's like, I think this is joy. I can hear laughter and the clinking of glasses, and I can see the sun in the garden and these blooms that Elaine has been tending to. So, okay, maybe I should stop shitting on Elaine's garden stuff. And that's when Cassian and Azriel stroll in. They're like, are you going to bring us alcohol or just stare at the flowers all day, man? You know, it's the usual jokey atmosphere, but then a silence kind of falls and they all are just standing there also listening to like Elaine and Feyre and Mor and everybody like just laughing and talking quietly in the other room. And they just all kind of have this realization of like, whoa, peace, man. And finally, Rhysand is just like, let's promise not to do this again for at least another 500 years. And Cassian is like, well, then what the fuck are we supposed to do until then? And Moore hears them and is like, how about you bring me the alcohol? And Feyre's like, and more bread. Until then, Rhysand says, we enjoy every heartbeat of this. Okay, finally we're back in Feyre's point of view. She finds Rhysand back in his little like moody place, you know, his like watchtower thing. And they have a little cuddle. She has put on the lingerie that they have always joked about, you know, she's got that on. And then she turns to him and is like, you don't fucking pull that ever again, okay? She's like, if we die together. You don't get to just do the hero thing, okay? My story. ACOTAR is mine. And she's like, remember the whole like, let me know your fucking crazy schemes? Okay? It applies to this too. None of that. When we go together. Deal or no deal? And he says, deal. And kisses her gently. In case you're wondering about Bryaxis, our little library demon, he is missing. So that is Feyre's next job / adventure. And Rhysand will help her with it. And he will help her on any adventure she ever wants to go on, ever. And then Rhysand gathers Feyre into his arms and they go flying and they just like look down at the city, at everything they fought for. He ends up like dangling her by the arm so that she can kind of learn to fly by herself. It's very cute. So they fly over Valeris and over the sea, and she realizes we have an eternity of nights to do this, to see everything together. What a gift it was, all of it. The end. That is the end of A Court of Wings and Ruin. That is the trilogy. There is A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is a novella. It's like a Christmas themed novella, and it's there for the smut, okay? And then we also have A Court of Silver Flames, which I have talked about that I don't really want to do, but maybe I should. Convince me in the comments. And I highly enjoyed this. I don't know why this one was so long. I feel like I told you that A Court of Mist and Fury was the one that had the most plot, but here you go. Here's a video that's nearly 4 hours long. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. This is just so fun. Whether you love or hate these books, I hope that you enjoyed this. We can come together on this one thing. Yeah, this has been a great time. So I will see you guys next time. Hope you're all doing well. Lost my voice, so I'm gonna go. But see you then, okay? Bye.